Today's going to be awesome. The topic is reconnecting with nature and also the future of Kona's agriculture. So we got a special guest going up after lunch, Jeff Knolls, who's in the place today. And he works with Kona soil and water conservation. And he does a lot of work, more on the USDA side, more like in the mainstream of things. So it'd be good to have him here. I thought we could have him break down some more of that kind of thought process and where the USDA type guys are coming from, and kind of just get an insight into that part of this world, because that's really a big part of agriculture. Actually, the main part of agriculture would be mainstream ag. So until we understand it, we're not going to be able to approach those guys, and we're not going to be able to intermingle with those guys, and if we know their language and we know how to approach it, and all from a positive side, not a malicious side or anything like that, but just in cooperation and moving this planet forward in a cohesive, intelligent way, So yeah, we got Jeff Knolls here today. Thanks for coming, bro. But before he goes up, I'm going to be doing my presentation, and it's called Reconnecting with Nature and exploring the mind of a natural farmer. So part of this lecture today and presentation I usually do with my K&F intro class, because the K&F intro class is introducing you to the mind of a natural farmer. Because if you don't understand the mindset, you won't quite grasp why we would go this route. And so I think once we understand where we're coming from mentally, and that just it's a slight shift of consciousness that it takes to really grasp some of these concepts, it really helps the student go forward faster. But today, let's get started. Reconnect with nature. I make that synonymous with reconnect with God or the Creator. Again, you fill in the blank. But reconnecting with that generic term God, which is not a generic feeling or concept of our source, where we came from, the reason why the birds know how to fly and our hair grows without telling it to, our heart beats without trying. There's some kind of force happening here, and it's the same force that nature embodies. So reconnecting with nature is reconnecting with God. And I thought today, when I was meditating on this presentation, was a bunch of scripture kept coming to my mind, as in the Bible. And there's so much information in this book. It's like a science book. It's a spiritual book. It's a book used to control other people. It's a loaded book. It's loaded with information, with parables, with science. So anyway, there's a lot of good things that we can derive from this ancient manuscripts. And so I'm going to take you down this road real quick here, and we're going to kind of go over this. Like, who are we? And I mean, according to, some ancient traditions, as in the scripture. I mean, we all have our own answers. Who are we? What is our purpose on this planet Earth? These are these eternal questions that man always goes over in his mind, right? Since eternity, who are we? What's our purpose? Okay? So I'm gonna jump past that into this, okay? So in the scriptures, we look right in the very first book of Genesis. And we're going to jump right to Genesis 1:26, okay? And bear with me, there's many translations. That's why originally I was going to bring 3 or 4 different scriptures and read the different translations. But then as I started putting this together, we can just get straight to the point. We don't need to do that, because I think we're all intelligent enough to understand, almost every one of these you pick up will have certain variations of the names of God. And this one is a good question. This one's a New Living Translation. Okay, so in this one I'm just going to read it straight. I might change a few things just to make it more comfortable for me to read, but here I go. Genesis 1:26. The Most High said, "Let us make human beings in our image, to be like ourselves. They will reign over," in other scriptures you'll see this word, "they will have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals, that scurry along the ground. So the Most High created human beings in His own image. In the image of the Most High, He created them, male and female. He created them. Then the Most High blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it." And govern it. Reign over it, or have dominion over it. The fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. Right? And it continues. It said, "Look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth, and all the fruit trees for your food. And I have given every green plant as food for the wild animals. The birds in the sky, the small animals that scurry, everything that has life," and that is what happened. And He looked and He said, "This is very good," and He was pleased. So what that said is to answer these questions: who are we? What is our purpose? Well, in the scripture, right in the very first book, it tells us the Most High gave us dominion, domination, right? Reign over. There's another scripture I was reading last night: mastery of. Okay? So, where did I put that? Okay, so mastery of, right? So in the Hebrew, we'll come to this word. Does it mean dominion as in to rule, like we would have slave the earth, enslave the earth? Is that what you think it's saying? I don't think so either. And really, if you start getting down to this root word where it says dominion in the scripture, so last night I looked up dominion in my concordance dictionary, and I looked up what is the root of this word in the Hebrew. And I came upon this word, rada. Okay? And rada means to subdue or to subjugate. But not in the violence or mistreatment form, but, and I quote, to bring under cultivation. Okay? So God gave you stewardship. He wanted you to subdue the earth and bring it under cultivation. This is from the scripture. This isn't, it's just what it's saying, So what is our purpose? What are we? What is our purpose? How come every other animal just does what they're meant to do? They just do what they're encoding, their DNA, their God-given purpose down to the microbe. They just do it. They don't question their purpose. It's all instinctual, okay? But for some reason, there's this upright, walking, ape-man-legged thing, our only animal that's not like this, doesn't have the chakras pointing that way. We're going up and down, to feed from the source, So what is this creature? And, if it's natural, what's its purpose, Oh, we're the only ones that can grab big logs and learn how to do a tourniquet rope to it and learn how and move that log. Well, what if that saved the waterway from being able to run that for the rest of that year just because we got 30 humans together and moved the log out that was blocking the waterway, Or we, as humans, we knew that we needed water to bring it to this village over here, so we directed the elephant herds to start walking this way because we knew how to make the big shields that had the flashy things that could then direct the, which other animals couldn't do these things. So it's stewardship you got to think on levels, like more than we sweep the road and we weed whip. No. Like I'm talking about we were the crafters of ecology, There's a book I have over here. It's called The Dark Emu, and it's about Aboriginal agriculture. The Aborigines of Australia and their agriculture. But basically they just stewarded the earth around them. They didn't really have intensive agriculture like the Hawaiians had. They would do stuff like collect wild tubers. Go cultivate them in a nice fertile patch. Make sure they got the best nutrition and best viability out of those native tubers instead of just collecting them wildly. So they have all this evidence of them doing agriculture. The modern science or modern books you read will tell you that they had no agriculture, that they were just hunter-gatherers. But if you read the Dark Emu and you read about real scholars that studied these men and women and children, it talks about the first settlers coming to Australia, the first white man to ever document setting foot, right? He's walking along this way. They see the other first humans for the first time. The humans come running to them, talking about the Aborigines. These guys are on their guard, right? They don't know what to expect. They come with cakes and water. So first of all, they'll tell you that they don't bake and they don't do that type of advanced, but they can't. But the very first guy to ever document said he got like a baked good and water, from the Aboriginals. Like they just came running with provisions to help these people right off the bat. No questions asked. They didn't know who they were. They looked for, So that's the type I feel that's what most, human beings are dealing with, the stewardship of the earth. And if you saw your brother or sister in need, you would obviously help them, and I feel that's the original way of man as compared to what the Bible tried to do to us through these certain translations like dominion and subduing and subjugation and all these kind of words that kind of have a negative connotation to them of controlling something and just using and abusing it as opposed to working in unison with it for the prosperity of the earth, all the animals. So really, instead of us being the lowliest creature that ruins everything, our real birthright and who we were created to be by the creator of all things is the pinnacle creature at the top, like the caretaker, right? Because we have, the earth is our subjects. The king has subjects. So that's what it's saying is in subjugation. It's saying the earth is our subjects. Now what that brings, it's not, so you got to understand, like if you were a righteous king, you couldn't just use and abuse your subjects. You'd lose them really fast, right? They'd either go to a different king or they would die and perish. They want to be healthy. They want to be producers. They want to help your kingdom prosper, right? So if the earth is our subjects, wouldn't we want to have them produce and it be its healthiest as it can be? Because it's our responsibility. We have kingship, queenship over this earth, So these words change when you understand them from a positive light and not a negative light, We're the kings and queens. And if God gave the earth as our subjects, then it's our responsibility. Not that we're going to use and abuse until we have no more. What kind of kingdom is that? That's like a losing kingdom. Now my seed doesn't even inherit, We used it all. So in all reality, in all real intelligence, not science and all this and that and guesswork and stuff, but just real human intelligence, we come to these conclusions, So these are some more words. Mastery is what's used for dominion. If you master a violin or a sport, what does that mean? If you're a master, you've studied it up and down, right? You've practiced it inside and out. You know it. You're the master of it. Okay, so if God gave us mastery in Genesis 1:20, mastery over the birds and the bees, we better get to know them. Right. We better be masters of this realm if that's truly our birthright. So we can't just settle with elementary science and this and that and not exploring nature and getting out there to know it and to be in it and to depend on someone else's YouTube lecture or book or something to know nature, to know your birthright. Because it's yours. You were born with it. No one can teach it to you or show you it. It's yours. So unless you practice it, you'll never know it. Rulership, mastery, equals responsibility equals accountability, right? So what does it do? If you read Genesis 1:26 and replace dominion with stewardship and responsibility, what would that do to your being, your soul? Instant accountability, right? So, and if you're accountable, you can't just do lame stuff anymore. You can't just throw your thing out the window when you're driving, not school your children, just eat anything you want and don't think there's a repercussion, because now you're accountable for your actions. So all this, just understanding this one verse will bring you into your royalty, you know? And that's really what we are. And we've been told by politicians and priests and police officers and all these bad mind people that think they have dominion over you, domination. They do it this style, domination. They told you were weak and small and poor, and that you were the poor class and you didn't deserve, you know? You can come to me and get a loan, you know, if your paperwork works out. Those are the kings that we got to go to and ask for favors and stuff, you know. But that's in their system. Only in their system do we have to play their game. But we are born into a system. We don't need to Relegion. We don't need to Relegion into a new system, right? How do you spell religion? Like that or something? But it's like Relegion, you know? We're already born into a legion, you know? It's God's legion, you know? We're already born into that kingship, that stewardship role. So we don't need to Relegion with anyone. And that's like what they're trying to make us do to join that matrix and that system when we're born. Sign the birth certificate, here you go. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, now you're in legion with that. And now all these people, most of the people we see day to day, think that they gotta only play those rules. But we are already born in legion with God, with the Creator. And so now we can play by His rules instead, you know? Of course, not doing anything dumb, but stepping razor, better watch my sides, I'm dangerous. You know, that's what Peter Tosh said, you know, like we're moving through the matrix like Neo. It's like, you know, like you can't, you know. Shut down the thing. Oh, we're good, you know. You know what I mean? Like, cut off the power, we're good. Stop the water, stop the we're good, because we play by His rules, not your matrix rules anymore, you know. So what I encourage is each and every one that hears this and is here today to exit the matrix, however small or large, you know, people here have already done that to a certain extent, and take back this kingship, queenship, rulership. So you guys got that concept down?
Yeah, for sure.
That was kind of that concept, and then I wanted to jump, still focusing on some scripture, and also going to read a little off the internet here of this other concept from the scripture because we're reconnecting with nature, right? Reconnecting with the divine intelligence, reconnecting with God. Genesis 2:7. Okay, I'm going to read that. Genesis 2:7. I'm actually going to start just right at Genesis 2:4. This is the account of the creations of heaven and earth, the man and the woman in Eden. When the Most High Jah made the earth and the heavens, neither wild plant nor grain were growing on the earth. The Lord Most High Jah had not yet sent rain to water the earth, and there were no people to cultivate the soil. That's what it says. Instead, springs came up from the ground and watered all the land. So it's already framing right here, what's the purpose of people? Right. It said there were no people to cultivate the earth. So it just proved everything that we just said previously, just with that one statement. But here we go. Then the Most High formed man from the dust of the ground. Some say dirt some say clay, depending on the translation again. But the point is, you came from the earth, right? The earthen soil, right? He breathed the breath of life into the man's nostrils, and the man became a living person. All these things matter. The person, if you look that up compared to man, mankind compared to man, all these things are different meanings when you're reading scripture, so you got to keep that in mind too. But I'm going to read some more information for you right here. Just keep in mind, man was formed, creation of life from the clay, right? It's found in many ancient cultures. Let's just go through a few here. Greek mythology, according to Pseudo-Apollodrus, the Prometheus molded men out of water and earth. In Sumerian mythology, the god Enki and Enlil created a servant of the gods of mankind of clay and blood. In another Sumerian story, both Enki and Ninmah created humans from the clay of Abzu, the fresh waters underground. The Epic of Gilgamesh, Enkidu, isn't that funny how the Sumerian text has Enki, and then the Epic of Gilgamesh, Enkidu, is created by the goddess Aruru out of clay to be a partner for Gilgamesh. Mighty in strength is the name Gilgamesh. According to Egyptian mythology, the god Khnum created human children from clay before placing them in their mother's womb. According to Chinese mythology, Nuwa molded figures from yellow earth, giving them life and the ability to bear children. In Babylonian creation epic, Enuma Elish, the goddess Ninhursag, created humans from clay. Hindu mythology, clay turned clay, Ganesh turned clay into flesh and blood. More Hawaiian tradition, I don't know how accurate this one is, but first man was composed of muddy water, and his female counterpart, I don't know about that because we talked about that the other day, but yeah, I think that's they're trying to talk about Kalo, which is, of course, fashioned from the earth, you know. Yoruba, men from clay. Genesis, from the dust. Quran, created men from clay. Maori tradition, first woman out of clay. Okay, you guys get the point, right? So, if we're made of the same elements as the earth, we're just like basically earth angels, you know, earth beings. You know, you could even look into scripture how there's the different stratas of angels, cherubim, seraphim, rephaim, Nephilim. There's all kind of different angel categories, but we're human beings are like earth angels. We're made of earth, where the fire angels are made of fire, water angels are made of water, but we're earth, you know. We have this carbon. All of our cells are carbon-based cells. Our hair and our being and our skeleton is all carbon-based. Carbon comes from the soil. The soil has every color in it, yeah? You guys have seen like palish soil all the way to the richest, blackest soil. So it's a representation of human beings of creation. Just wanted to tie in just that we are earth. We're earth. And the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, you know. So just wanted to show you guys, you know, just how important it is to understand our purpose and reconnecting with nature, which is the theme today. Stewardship of the earth, you know, that's the message. That's the message. So any questions about that? Yeah.
I think it's cool to point out that it's not saying don't do anything. You know, some people, like, they see the rule of, like, the domination in order to, like, fight back against that. It's like they do nothing.
Right,
so, like,
right.
Let it go wild.
Right, right.
No, it's the cultivation and the controlling of it in a positive way. That's like the middle where
100%.
Babylon almost catches you on either side.
100%. Great point. And it's almost like you could think of it as a parental. you know?
Right.
It's like being a parent, like it's not necessarily like you can't just sit by neutral and let your child raise itself, you know? Enable it, you know?
Whatever, you know?
So yeah, it's really, you got to wrap your mind around this, and we got to be adults about it, you know? We can't just look at, reject the Bible because, oh, it's male dominant and this and that, you know? Like, no, the scripture was neutral. Those who wield it are dominant of some weird thing, but the powers are neutral. Just like even money, you could say, is like neutral power. It's a tool. Those who use it are going to determine if it's got the negative or positive connotation. So
you don't use it at all.
right, we got to use it, and then also back to your point is that you know, you can tell the rulers of this world tried to use this thing as a control just by that dominion word.
Right.
Just that one word is powerful enough to flip your purpose of who you are. So if, say, you were raised in a church and this was like your life, and then your preacher told you had dominion over the earth, and you went home and contemplated that, and you looked up the word domination, and it just goes down this negative path, and then all of a sudden you got this pompous attitude towards nature, and you could subjugate it and whip it and treat it bad. But no, just like we said, a king that does that, he's not going to last long. So a queen that does that's not going to last long. So if you want your subjects, which would be the earth, to favor you and then to work hard, like if you want the plants to rejoice when you come out to water them and to be with them, you got to be that good human being, that righteous vibration, so they can have that compatibility to give back to you, or else they're going to read you as negative and might not perform, you know, down to the microbe and the worm, you know.
I think that's just like nature, you know, that's a cycle of nature, you know, it just gets rid of the bad itself, you know what I mean?
It's so true,
Yeah.
you know, whether it takes 100 years or 5 minutes, like it's always working to balance, you know.
Yeah.
And that's like we got back to that negative microbe thing. Well, it's only negative in that connotation of it trying to balance out what's wrong, you know.
Yep.
And so it might look bad, but it's in the long term, it's only good,
It's
you
only
know.
balance
Right.
or short term to balance it out in the long run.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right. It's the human concept that gets kind of distorted. Just to finish on that reconnecting on that last before we jump into a little bit of the mind of a natural farmer. I'm going to prime your mind a little bit with some of Masanobu Fukuoka and the ending of a speech that he gave on nature as a teacher. Natural farming is a method that actually goes a step beyond science. The proof is that over these past 20 years, I have not read a single book on the topic, and yet have managed to stay at the forefront of rice cultivation practices in Japan. Try comparing the findings that I report 10 years ago with what agriculture testing centers have been doing thereafter, and you'll see that most prefectural centers, that's like the states, are now doing what one lone farmer tried decades ago. And they're arriving at the same conclusion. But of course, 10 years after me. He's given a live speech. My purpose here is not to boast. I would simply like you to know that I always walk the shortest road. By this I mean that my teacher is nature itself. Nature is always perfect in every case. I have had a good teacher. Other people have broken down nature and looked at it only as small fragments, so they learn what is incomplete. But they have bad teacher. Despite their diligent study and application, they reap little from their efforts. Science never does any more than mimic a virtual image of nature that exists only in the human mind. I'm going to read that again. Science never does any more than mimic a virtual image of nature that exists only in the human mind. So what it grasps is only an incomplete and inferior imitation of the real thing. I can assert here, without the least stand, with scientific knowledge will always be inferior to nature. When one realizes just how wondrous a thing nature is, one can only bow to it in humble acknowledgement. The moment that we become humble before nature and renounce the self, the self shall become assimilated into nature, and nature shall allow it to live. Even a small ego becomes capable of summoning the great strength. It is enough merely to know this road and to walk it each day. Whoo! Powers, man. Like, imagine this guy up here just like drilling that home to a large audience, you know what I mean? Yeah, for real. He's like, this humble acknowledgement, you know? So, yeah, that's how I wanted to kind of bridge from that scriptural, you know, our purpose to Masanobu talking about nature as the supreme teacher, you know? And Masanobu also will, in his writings, will use nature or God synonymously back and forth, you know. It's just how, just when you need to wrap your mind around it, you know, certain words come to the forefront a little better. But let's get into this. This is what I go over, like I said, in my natural farming class, but I'm going to give you a little version of it today. Yeah, we got some time. So, natural farming, obviously why we're all here, teaming with nature instead of teaming with companies, with technology companies, fertilizer companies. We're going to try to employ nature as much as possible. So if you're on Instagram too, you can follow these hashtags or start tagging your stuff with them. And natural farming encompasses working with natures like earthworms, you know, ducks, you know, things we've discussed in the past. Natural farming techniques, we're all familiar with that. Korean natural farming, the type of natural farming that I'm most schooled in, and the type of natural farming that gives you the most hands-on recipes and application guides. So we got the 9 core elements out there we can always take a look at, and we can dive into those more on a K&F course, which will be coming up in August. This is a term right here that I always like to introduce my students to: esoteric farming. Esoteric means information, hidden information only given to a select group. And that's not on purpose necessarily, but that just ends up what's happening with a lot of the new farming information. It's kind of shrouded in mystery. So I like to coin this phrase, esoteric farming, because we're bringing this hidden information to the light, making it the opposite of esoteric, exoteric, which would be outward information, revealed information, you know. So we're bringing esoteric into exoteric. Microbial shepherds, I always like this term because makes you think of the soil and the microbes as a living being. We talked about that last week. A lot of the themes, you know, we'll be going over and over and drilling them in your head. So we're moving microbes around like they're sheep, or like you know, like they're an animal. So we're keeping them alive in our soil. Institute of Natural Farming, give it a follow if you haven't already. Got the new Instagram page and also got the new YouTube channel, Institute of Natural Farming. Got a few offerings up there and a bunch more to come. And then one other one that I added in is the human bioinstrument. What I try to teach is getting away from, you know, of course, maybe in the beginning you're going to have to use thermometers and measuring cups and you know, all these tools that man has made to make life easier. But the easiest tools to use were the ones we were born with. We got these crazy sensory organs called fingertips and toes, and this super sensitive smelling device that lets us determine good from bad. And once you become familiar with these microbial sets, you can tell just by the smell if something's good or bad. You can, when you're doing your composting or your FPJs or your IMO3 piles, you'll just be able to tell by the smell, you know, and that's where we're trying to get, you know, back in tune with nature, back in tune with microbes, and we could just pick up these things and touch them with our fingers and go, oh, that's too hot, I'm going to mix that. Oh, that's not warm yet, you know, I'm going to let that keep going, you know, and start to really use these things instead of depending on the thermometer, you know, because we're born with thermometers. It might not work the very first time, but the second, third, fourth, especially the fifth, it's going to be perfect. Your thermometer is going to work fine. Into the IMO 3 pile. Too hot. Turn it, you know. Oh, that's right. I think that's about 110. Yeah, that's 110. That's perfect. It's riding good, you know. So like that's where I encourage us all to start going, and goes back to the beginning of the day with that. You know, we're
Mastering.
yeah, mastering, exactly. We're knowing all, exactly. So I'm gonna keep moving forward on this, and we could do one of two things. Up to you guys. We could either I could do a more intensive dive into the mind of a natural farmer, and then we could eat lunch and Jeff could go up, or we could I could breeze through this a little quicker, have Jeff go up, and then we could just end the day and eat lunch. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
You know, breeze through it a little quicker than sticking around for the whole day. What do you guys think?
Down for whatever.
Yeah, so
Down for whatever.
They're not here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's we'll move through this. As soon as I'm done, I'll ask you guys again, and then we could go from there. All right. The mind of a natural farmer. Vision and meditation. So we'll go into that more when we do a K&F class. Ancient technology and microbial possibilities. This harkens back to Drake. And when like Drake was here, and if you tune into his podcast, Microbial Secret Society, you'll start seeing what I'm talking about by ancient technologies and microbial possibilities. I'll give you one example right now. Where are our ancestors? What would you guys say? There's no right answer, right or wrong answer. Just like I'm going to show you one possibility. They are us. Yeah, they're living in us for sure. You know.
Genetic code, you know.
They're in our genetic coding for sure. But then again, literally, where are they? Like Alex said, right? They're in the soil, right? They've become soil, literally. Our ancestors, your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents, your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparent is in the soil right now. Right?
From the earth.
Right. Amazing. So amazing that our ancestors are literally soil, okay? Microbes had to eat their bodies, their bones, their minds, everything, and decay them into soil. Microbes and viruses are capable of transferring DNA, right? We learned this in the virus class. We got the ability to transfer DNA into soil via microbial interaction, okay? So now we come along and we want to catch some IMO, right? We're going to do a dry rice catch. Right, and usually you'll go out to the apex native forest. But this time we go to our great-grandparents' gravesite, right? Or we go to a native ancient Hawaiian burial ground, right? And we do our catch there. Now this is all feeling, hypothetical, but real to me. So you guys can make whatever you want of it. You go there and you put out your catch and you collect microbiology from that site. There's a strong possibility that there's some kind of DNA of the ancients or your deceased relative right there in that catch. Strong possibility. So what I'm trying to say is that the DNA of us, of humankind, and the memories in our DNA are in the soil still. And we can capture them in IMO. So that's just one example of ancient technology and what I'm talking about of the possibilities once you start diving into Korean natural farming and once you start tuning back in with nature, what wells up inside you, what kind of intelligent ideas you get. You basically, when you start gardening and farming and being out in nature more, earthing with your shoes off, breathing, listening to the birds and the trees, spiritual experiences will happen to you. I can guarantee it. These experiences for me can sometimes be overwhelming to where I got to put down the shovel and just check out the brilliance of the creation. Maybe cry a little bit or just observe and move on, or whatever the case may be. But the mind of a natural farmer is something that develops with practice, but not like you gotta practice like karate. You're not doing a certain move or anything like that. It's just being, right? A human being, right? We're a human. We're not a being, right? We're not a being. It's not a being. Did you guys ever think about this word, or is it just me? Not so deep. But everyone goes, yeah, I'm a human being. Or a being. You're a human being.
Right.
You're not a human being or a being. You're a human being. In the act of being. You're an action word. Right? So we're participating in nature. We're being human. And I feel that the system, Babylon, whatever you want to call it, has removed us from being human. So we're just kind of human now. We're not human being. So we need to return, to reconnect with nature and be human again. The real thing. Like a caterpillar is just a caterpillar. It just does what caterpillars do. It doesn't think like, well, I don't like being a caterpillar and maybe I'll be a duck, you know. They don't have those thoughts. Well, I'm sorry, I'll break it to you, but that's just the way it is. Because they're caterpillar being, right? They're being what they were created to be. They didn't choose to be something else or get tricked or coerced into being something else, or usurped or beat into submission. So we need to just take back our birthright, our kingship, and start being human. Okay, so yeah, this is just something you guys could think about, some more ancient technology and the possibilities of applying these microbes. And remember that Drake said we only need 5% to turn the 60% neutral good. So, big possibilities. I'm going to walk you through this real quick because this always helps get into the mind of a natural farmer, into the mind of nature. This word, Akua. What's Akua mean in Hawaiian?
Creator.
It's the God, the creator, right? Akua. This is a term for creator, or what the Christians would say God. Akua. Okay? Now think for a minute and follow me on this reasoning. Does anyone know the word for mycelium or mushroom or fungi in Hawaiian?
It's the same word.
It's the same word.
It's the same word.
It's Akua. Means fungus or fungi or mushroom or mycelia, you know? What? Why would the same word for God mean mushroom?
You know why?
So what we got here, what do we have in common? Unseen powers, life-giving. What are some more attributes that both of these have in common? Intelligence. They both are, what is God like in Indian myth? Creator, sustainer, and destroyer. What does fungi do? Cycles. It cycles, you know? So we have a cycle, you know, a decomposer. You know, So now you can see the correlation going on and why a native mind or a natural mind or a human mind might think of God and then see the activity of microbiology as the same attribute. And so when we talk about the mind of a natural farmer, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about tuning back into this and realizing that these powers exist on the earth. You know? Any questions about that? I always like that one. Also, to talk about this, also, the human bioinstrument that we talked about earlier, it only has a certain spectrum, right? Like our vision can only see a certain spectrum from, like we can't even see infrared or ultraviolet. Like we can only see visible spectrum. And there's spectrum here and spectrum here, and we get a visible spectrum. So these don't exist? Are these not real anymore? These other spectrums? No, they exist. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean they don't exist, right? So sound, we only can hear certain hertz. There's a whole spectrum that we can't hear. So those sounds don't exist? Why can a dog hear a dog whistle but you can't? That dog's not hearing anything? No. Vision, spectrum. We only get to see what the Creator wants us to see. That's all we get to see. I mean, there's ways to see other things with the mind's eye. Dane can tell you about that. But you got these two eyeballs, and you can only see a certain spectrum. You know? Does that mean this whole other visible light spectrum doesn't exist? No. So what are the possibilities in those spectrums of life, of entity, of beings, you know? I don't know, but it makes sense when you start seeing why a native mind might put these two words together, you know? Food as an essential resource. I wanted to share this quote from the late Von Benjamin, Akibeka Midnight. He says, "Whatever you believe, it's still food you need." Go philosophize all day long, you know? Become this religion, become that religion. Go do that method, do this method. Well, at the end of the day, you need at least like 1 or 2 or 3 of these things, meals. Or else you're going to be hurting. And your mind's going to start slipping. And your health is going to start slipping until you're not a human being anymore. And then you start to die because you don't got food, the basic necessity. Whatever you believe. You could argue till you're red in the face. At the end of the day, you got to go eat something, you know? So we know nature's true. Nature doesn't lie. We know nature's true. Nature can't lie. The mind must be incompatibility and understand nature's plan. So you might have a plan for an orchard and you bought your property at 2,000 feet and you just moved to Hawaii from Southern California and you wanted, because you love those Hawaiian mangoes, you know? And you bought this primo piece of property, bulldozed it, and you installed this big mango orchard, and you're spraying it with chemis, and you're like, want these mangoes. But you don't get no mangoes. You get rotten flower buds. You get trees that aren't prospering because you didn't understand nature's plan, and you kind of went with man's plan instead. You know, you didn't work with permaculture techniques of swales and cover cropping and weeding. You went with Roundup, and you went with monoculture, and you have to pay the consequence. You can't think you can do that, and papaya fields aren't going to get so nasty. You got to move to the next one and the next one and the next one every 5-10 years, and leave those lands to be rotten and poisoned. You know. That's not nature's plan. That's man's plan, you know, but we want to tune in with nature's plan. So we team with nature versus teaming with tech, corporations. We're teaming with nature instead of fighting against nature. We're gonna welcome weeds as companions until we have them subdued, right? In a good way. Right? So we're teaming up with nature. We're teaming with microbes. We're teaming with life. We're not going to team up with death. I'll read this quote real quick from His Imperial Majesty, Haile Selassie. A country and a people that become self-sufficient by the development of agriculture can look forward with confidence to the future. Agriculture is not only the chief among those fundamental and ancient tasks which have been essential to the survival of mankind, but also ranks first amongst the prerequisites to industrial and other developments. Remember, I don't care what you believe, it's still food you need, you know? So real quick, I'm just going to run through this pretty fast. History of ag. We've done the Ahupua'a system, and we've talked about today, we've already touched on the Aborigines, Native American, Three Sisters, and also forest stewardship was big for Native Americans. They didn't, not all of them necessarily had like plots of agriculture, but all of them did some form of land stewardship to keep acorns and deer and everything flowing, you know. Easter Island is a really interesting, what are the Moai? The Moai, I think they call those big statues of Easter Island. But they're famous for mysteriously every tree disappeared on that island, and there's all kind of theories of why.
Yeah, exactly, right.
You know, but there's no vegetation.
Right.
But how did these people? They had choke people living there.
Yeah.
Even when the Westerners came and found them, there was a lot of people there living with no trees, eating taro, eating canoe plants and stuff. But how'd they do it? Does anybody ever study this culture? It's pretty dope. They did it rock mulching.
Oh, really?
Rock mulching. They would put taro in a pile of rocks and have it at the right elevation where the morning dew
would water it.
that collected on the bottom of the rocks would water the taro. And remember we talked about taro like growing everywhere if you have certain strains?
Yeah.
Well, they had these rock mounds with taros in the middle. And that was enough to grow their food, you know? So rock mulching.
Right.
We can do that here to a certain extent, you know? Prop up some rocks, maybe even give a little air gap, you know, on some bigger rocks, like put some smaller ones underneath as a mulch layer, you know? Get creative, you know, like on a fruit tree. You could have some cool looking rock sculpture around the base, which is actually a shade and mulch for the animals underneath it, you know? European hugel mounds we talked about, Hawaiian Ahupua'a system. World War II, we talked a little bit about in the past couple classes, and we talked about 80% of the population being farmers, and now only 2%, rough numbers. World War II created agriculture, chemical ag. Basically, it was a byproduct of manufacturing bombs and ammunition. Nitrogen, what's it called? What's it called? Ammonium nitrate, the weird phosphates. All these things came from like making these munitions, and then they didn't know what to do with them, so they started spraying them on food products and agriculture products and started selling them to the ag industry. And then they went around the world. This is like a Rockefeller-backed like campaign to basically go around the world and take indigenous farming and convince them to buy these crystals of fertilizer, and that it'll boost your yield and give you more time off and more easy application. You don't got to mulch. You don't got to do all these things, you know. And they sold it to farmers, and unintelligent people picked it up right away. And then intelligent people fought against it to their own demise. Jail, murder, deported, all kinds of things, you know. So it wasn't a joke when this chemical ag came on the scene. The bullies behind the industry that wanted to sell this to the world weren't taking no for an answer, you know. So they quickly changed almost the entire planet to chemical ag, and only pockets of natural farming remained. This is the what happens with standard monocrop chemical ag. You get your runoff, you get your topsoil layer, your no organic matter, death to your microbes, saltification of your fields to the point where nothing will really want to grow. This is just a quick example of like a natural farm compared to a tillage. Nature, just how nature's roots would look compared to a tilled agriculture roots of the same crop. And you can kind of see that there. It created desertification was the outcome in a lot of places, and that's when we got the Dust Bowl, and we got the what is it called? The Great Depression, or whatever it's called. Is that what it's called? The Great Depression? Because we just had that 2008, they're calling some Great Depression too, or something. Is that the word for it? Great Depression?
Grapes of Wrath was around.
Yeah, exactly, that book and everything. Yeah, right. So if you want to look at what that world looked like, read the Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah.
It looks terrible.
Yeah, it was horrible.
It was horrible. And why did it happen? Because of this. Like, that's the only reason. That's because they tricked us into killing our soil, you know?
Now it's happening, you know, in the Philippines and like South America with the bananas.
Right.
Monoculture with the bananas.
Right. Anywhere that they did this trickery, monoculture, it's all coming now. 2020, it's coming around now, because like I said, like that chemical fertilizer might give you a good crop or two, and a bumper crop or two, and not good as in nutritious, but good as in money making. Yeah. And maybe even visual.
Right.
You know, you got these giant leaves all of a sudden, and all these giant fruits growing at crazy rates and stuff. But that's only temporary.
Right.
That's not going to last you. It's non-sustainable. Plus, you gotta.
And how healthy is that for you?
It's not. No, it's not good. Like, that's what I mean. The nutritional value of those crops is like not even good. Like, they're so starchy and nasty. It's like almost anti-health. There's the Akua system again.
And you go to it too and learn about it. They took actually, like, they're not even using those best bananas or the best pineapples, you know, they're actually using the ones, like you said, like the ones that look good.
Right.
That have
Exactly. And
visual features.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was going to skip over this. Food as a commodity equals loss of diversity.
Right.
So what he's saying is, since food became a commodity that needed to be shipped, shelf life, storable, movable, like there goes 99% of the viable varieties of things, even the ones that we eat. Like, so corn going from hundreds of varieties to 2, you know, or potatoes going from hundreds to 2.
Or like you were saying, wheat too, you know.
Wheat actually changing its whole molecular structure into this weird gluten-filled thing we have today, compared to these nutritious crops. They were just grass seeds. Wheat and stuff, like, they're just grass seeds.
Wow.
How could that be bad for you?
When did this whole gluten thing, I mean, it hasn't been that long.
No, it hasn't been that long. It's like 20, like 30, maybe 40. Like John Balloon knows the exact answer to that. We talked about it.
Crazy.
It was like, they even have a name for it. This like certain type of grain that came out, something H.I.N.F.H.E or something like that. You know. It's not quite even a GMO. It's just like an ultra hybridized, nasty. It is frankenfood, but it's not quite GMO, you know? Yeah. So, so imagine all those crops we lost in our diet. And even if we depend on Costco to eat here on the Big Island, you're still only getting like those certain funneled down varieties that can be shipped across the ocean and maintain freshness, you know? So what we need to do is as a, you know, back to the health class, would be to incorporate native foods, you know, the message once again. Food is global control mechanism. So that was part of the World War II takeover, and that because they knew the long-term goal was to pinch those people down. Oh, they can't fertilize their crop now unless they call us. Oh, they need more seed because it was like Terminator seed, or the seed wasn't viable, or whatever. So Roundup. So they got to call us. They got to keep buying. And there you get a control mechanism. Now you control people's food. I don't care what you think. It's still food you need.
Yeah, and you put them in debt too, yeah.
Put them in debt because they got to buy the tractors. They all got to buy these big old silos. And who will save us? Who's gonna do it? Yeah, we're gonna do it.
Yo, damn self.
That's for sure. But luckily, we also have some instructors along the way. Starting with Masanobu Fukuoka, right? Heroes of modern ag. Who's gonna bring us out of the dark and back into the light, right? We got these guys, man. We got our guys. Masanobu Fukuoka. Farming is a revolutionary act, right? That's what he says. Farming is a revolutionary act. Was it like that 100 years ago? No, that was just part of life. But now, it's a revolutionary act. I feel honestly, when I go on Instagram and I post food, it really is to get people inspired. But I feel kind of dumb doing it because just 50, that's just was standard life, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, check it out. I went to the bathroom, you know, or like whatever, you know, check it out. I walked the dog, you know, or whatever. Like that was just part of life, like growing food and being in with agriculture. But now it's something to flash.
Right.
Now it's like, whoa, that guy's doing something different than the rest of us are doing. That's interesting, you know. But really, to me, that should be like
Natural.
just coming, you know. Yeah, like okay, of course you got abundance. Like isn't that what we do, you know? But it is now a revolutionary act, which is cool. Because we're revolutionaries, you know? So we don't need to burn down courthouses and stuff. We can go plant a garden.
Right.
Well, that, and I feel like when I
Makes
post
sense.
things, like when I'm showing people about my garden, just look at that, it's more like a trading, a bartering.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? Where I have abundance of this, if you have abundance of that, we can meet in the middle and, you know, we can make both of our families happy.
100%. And that's why that Ahupua system was so great because you didn't have to grow everything.
Yeah.
Right.
You could go walk down to meet your brother at the beach and trade him some of your highland bananas and stuff for some of his lowland taro or whatever, you know, or whatever the case may be. You know, he's got the bomb papayas because he lives closer to the ocean. You can't grow papayas because you're up in the cloud forest, but now you're eating papayas.
Right.
Because in a natural system, it isn't scarcity mentality. No one's hoarding. No one thinks they own the food. So it'd be easier to share it,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And so these are the things that we need to do. The mind of a natural farmer gives food away.
Yes.
Food is the sustenance of life. Of course, it can make you money. Remember we did that equation, produce equals money because you're a producer. And yes, we need to make a living. But in the mind of a natural farmer, we have no qualms with helping those who need food. It's easy because we got abundance.
Exactly.
Right. Right. So Masanobu, definitely check him out. He also has a few more quotes I love. The ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, but the cultivation and perfection of human beings, right? He wrote the book One Straw Revolution, and also the follow-up, The Road Back to Nature, as well as Sowing Seeds in the Desert, and The Way of Natural Farming, which are more applicable books, The Way of Natural Farming, and then the other one, Sowing Seeds in the Desert, is him going to California and Africa and whatnot and actually giving people prescription on how to reverse desertification. And this is being done in Dubai, in parts of the Middle East, in Africa. There are methods to reverse desertification. There's no reason that we have to have deserts, and it makes me think, I'm sure deserts are natural. I mean, I can't get over that thought. But it makes me think if the expanses of deserts, like the big ones we see, are more man-made than nature-made. I'm talking to like the past that we might not have recorded record of.
Right.
You know, some kind of mistreatment, maybe even way back then, you know, like Atlantis or Lemuria or something, you know?
Especially deforestation, massive.
Deforestation.
There's led to a lot of desertification around the world.
Right. So a lot of that's either man-assisted or man-made, you know? The expanses of deserts, you know? And then that just makes my mind think, and I'm this just hypothetical 100%, but like what is Mars, you know?
Right.
And like, you know, just really going out there because Mars is like a desert, you know? And of course there's the sun and all those kind of science to involve, but you know, just the possibilities. Was that inhabitable at one point? They said there's like waterways and like pyramids on there and shit, like, you know, but I'm just saying, you know.
Wasn't Gaddafi doing a lot of green, doing a lot
Yeah,
of
Gaddafi was doing a lot of reforestation,
Yeah.
and yep, and then once they murdered him, that the gold dinar stopped. The African gold dinar was put to a halt, which would have shocked the Rockefellers and all those dudes, the central banks of the world. And then also
But he was doing
all of
massive
his good
growth
stuff
agriculture.
stopped. All his social welfare programs, 6 months leave for pregnant women. All this stuff stopped, and then the slave trade started.
Right.
The human
he
slave
was-
trade
he was a
in
part of
Libya started straight after he died, you know. So yeah, a little
I
bit.
think like the plan is kind of like you would, like your farm, you know what I mean, in a bigger, because like you already know that the winds from the desert take it to the ocean, feeds all the microbes in the ocean, the phytoplankton and stuff like that, and that's where like the whole like worldly food web kind of happens, you know what I mean? We're just kind of, like you were saying, we're not mastering that part, that mind process, and then stewarding it in our human way, which is, you know, making our own little generators of microbial activity where we're at, you know what I mean?
100%, 100%, and that's why we can also alleviate some of the stress, and say, you know, I don't need to save the world if I can just work on my location.
Yeah.
It'll start moving outward, and then if a homie down the street's doing the same thing, our boundaries are going to meet eventually with those positive microbes and earth stewardship, and then the homie 20 miles away is doing it, and so everything starts webbing together. And that's another vision I used to have, is that the world was one network of mycelia, the whole entire globe, through the ocean waters, through the land, and there was an intelligent communication from China to Hawaii to Japan to Washington. It was all, any message that needed to be sent through the fungal mycelia networks could be done when Earth was its own. And that's what I also think a part of these overlord human controllers are cutting off energetic lines, also running, you know, trenches and roadways through microbial superhighways, you know, and yeah, you know, even the internet is a mimic of the mycelia super net underneath the world. You know, they've examined these structures and mimic those structures to create like the internet and whatnot, you know. So, you know, nature is good. Nature's got the answers. Some more quotes from Masanobu. Ignorance, hatred, and greed are killing nature, you know. This is when he talks about all we need is a quarter acre. In my opinion, 100% of the people were farmers, it would be ideal. If each person were given 1/4 acre, that's 1/4 acre to a family of 5. That would be more than enough land to support the family for the whole year. If natural farming were practiced, a farmer would also have plenty of time for leisure and social activities within the village community. I think this is the most direct path towards making this country a happy, pleasant land. I would have to agree with that 100%. Because if you have this village type community, everyone would have their purpose. The elders would be the teachers, caretakers of the children. The able-bodied men and women would do the work. The children would always be looked after. And we'd all have a sense of self and a sense of purpose because we are part of a village-type community. Where in the West, we're individualized, leads to a lot of depression, loneliness, non-purpose-filled lives, you know. So this would get us back. And then imagine a festival, you know, a harvest festival if you were living in a village like this. Like, that's like so fun, you know, like every year everyone gets together, we worked and we pulled in the crops, and then the band starts playing, and then everyone's dancing, but not only are we dancing, that's threshing the grain as we go, and we're pounding the wheat out of the thing, all part of the dance, you know. So work becomes fun and it becomes ceremony and tradition, you know. So we're missing that in the West, which is sad, you know. Let's get on to Master Cho, the creator of Korean natural farming. No, you can grab me the Master Cho books over there, and also the Rudolf Steiner books if you can find it, and that permaculture book. He wrote the K.N.F. Korean Natural Farming. It's just called Natural Farming by Master Cho book, and he's the founder of Korean Natural Farming, and he super crucial to study Korean Natural Farming.
There's like a mastery, like a doctorate program in Korea.
Yeah, I think there is actually a college now
Yeah.
in Korea, South Korea, offering a K.N.F.
Doctorate, yeah.
Yeah, or doctorate or bachelor type. Yeah, that one's perfect, bro. The permaculture book. Yeah.
Something like that, but like, yeah,
So this one right here is one of the first. Thanks, bro. One of the first K.N.F. Actual books that came out, and it has the philosophy in the beginning, and then it has all the recipes. Keep in mind, if you find this book on Amazon or eBay or something, there is some Korean to English mistranslations and kind of hard to read some spots, and that's why it's always good to take a course from myself or Drake or Chris Trump or any of these natural farming teachers, because they've gone through the steps of actually producing all the inputs and know the little subtleties that might be slightly off in the book, but still you can get it all from here and just doing a little research. Master Cho, Korean Natural Farming, making your own fertilizers with stuff from your land, sugar ferments, vinegar extracts, and alcohol tinctures. Rudolf Steiner, the founder of biodynamic farming. A lot of mysticism and occult science is involved in this type of farming, but all relates back to practical science as well once you break it down and you see what he's talking about. We talked about the horn. They bury the cow horn with the manure and the compost from the year before. And my whole life I had no idea why they did that, and I thought it was some kind of weird witchcraft thing. But little do you know, you study it, you read it yourself, you don't hear secondhand. That was the storage of the microbial life at its peak from the year before, overwintered underground, brought back up, and scattered to re-inoculate the beds the next year. Perfectly makes sense once you understand purpose. No reason to badmouth anybody, you know? Yeah, you can use several things, but yeah, it goes back to natural farming and what's available, and a vessel that would be right there that's microbial rich and in conjunction with the earth, and also the symbology of the horn and to fertility, to northern cultures, to different reasons, I'm sure, but also the makeup, the scientific of what that, silica. It's like pure calcium and silica, basically, is that horn. So I'm sure they're mining that as they're in there, and that's getting imbued into the microbes as well, All of nature begins to whisper its secrets to us through its sounds. Sounds that we previously incomprehensible to our soul now become the meaningful language of nature. Again, just touching on tuning into nature. For every human illness, there's a plant that cures it. Rudolf Steiner. Bill Mollison, this is the guy who founded permaculture, which is another form of natural farming that we highly suggest and that we implement on our farm and also incorporate into K.N.F. Greatest change we need to make is from consumption to production. We've talked about that, right? Even if on a small scale, in our own gardens. If only 10% of us would do this, there'd be enough for everyone. Hence the futility of revolutionaries who have no gardens. What's a revolutionary without a garden? Who depends on the very system they attack, and who produce words and bullets, not food and shelter. Who's really a revolutionary? This is a wise man here, I want to take those words lightly, This man left the corporate world and the big world of money and everything to be a farmer, and to tune into nature. And he came up with permaculture just by meditating in nature, being one with nature. He made a whole method of farming of how we get back to nature and use nature to our advantage and be those subduers and caretakers and stewards of nature. That's huge for today, right? With all these protests going on.
Men before their, you know.
Revolutionaries, right? Hence the futility of revolutionaries who have no gardens. Philosophy, permaculture is philosophy working with rather than against nature. Looking at systems in all their functions rather than only asking one yield of them. Right? Elaine Ingham, grandmother of compost and the founder of the term soil food web. And the most modern teacher of we have these little critters in the soil that matter. They matter a lot. They're the whole function of the soil. So we'll get more into that during a K&F soil course. Super crucial, more moving into modern times. She's still alive. She's Mary Reynolds. I love Mary Reynolds. You want to grab me that book, Garden Awakening, if it's over there? It's like a bigger one. Mary Reynolds, I can't, if you look her up on podcasts and stuff, I think you'll be gladly surprised by how she talks, especially females and women really dig her a lot. Just like she's like got this real gentle approach to nature and like you could almost feel her sadness that she feels for nature when she talks and stuff, and her sensitivity to what's going on in the world, and that's why I really dig her. And she has this book right here called Garden Awakening, The Garden Awakening, Designs to Nurture Our Land and Ourselves. And she's really about rewilding nature. She thinks that if we had the original wild plants in their places, that'll be restoration alone that we need. So she's all about rewilding nature, and she has a really cool Instagram page and stuff. And she talks about the, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, but the Unkaila, which are the women of the woods, or the witch of the woods, the old woman of the woods, was these terms in northern traditions, European traditions. And that's who she says she embodies that, you know. So I don't know. I really like her vibes. She just lays it down. She won the in England they have this big garden show where it's all these snooty people with their like manicured lawns and perfect tulips and all this stuff. And she entered one year and she did like this whole wild scene from Ireland with all these native trees and plants, and had it all like positioned like nature with like a stream, and she won it her first year ever entering. And that
like the trash, you know, like they're doing like all the trash, like
yeah
clothing lines and stuff.
Right.
Shows and they're winning.
Yeah, exactly. That's what
Going back to square one.
Going back to the root, right? Keep it easy. Okay, so soil food web. How plants eat. I'll probably save that for more of a natural farming class. But basically, you know, like we talked about, feed the soil, don't feed the plant. The soil feeds the plant because it's all dependent on the microbiology of what's going to be available to the plant. So we'll go over that more in depth on a different class. This one, I'll touch on this one real quick because it's really important. Soil food web, microbes. Human-plant microbe connection. I can't stress this enough. The Creator made one form of life. If you're made from this Creator in this realm, you eat something, you drink something. You poop and pee, you reproduce. You breathe. You know? I don't care if you're an animal, a microbe, or a tree, you're doing these things. Okay? One exception would be that virus. It's not doing all those things. But we want to compare here. I know it's a funny drawing, but just kind of bear with me. This is a tree, and what I'm showing is right here is what Master Cho calls the nose or the lungs of the plant. And so that would be like where, if a human being was buried, we would be, you know, our limbs would be the limbs of a plant, including your legs. That's why they're above ground here. And you would be buried, this part of your body would be underground. Those are your roots, right? Where you poop, pee, and digest would be underground if a human was compared to a plant. But it's going to do the same thing. It's going to put waste into the soil, just like over here, and it's going to attract certain microbes to feed it, just like we do in our gut. We put certain foods in our gut, and the digestion process feeds us, you know. So I just want everyone to know that that's the case, that the creator of this realm, this earth or whatever it is, has the same model all the way down from the micro to the macro, from the human to the plant. Any questions on that? So that shows you too how dependent we are on the microbe also, the symbiosis. All right, Korean natural farming. Pretty much coming to an end here. Korean natural farming, yeah. So yeah, it's pretty much, we're gonna go over all this more in a Korean natural farming class. This is pretty cool. I made instead of an FAA out of fish, this is for people that don't live by the ocean. They can make it out of slugs or snails or even frogs. Probably wouldn't be the funnest process. Ooh, the worms would be gnarly, bro. Yeah. Oh, bro, the worm would be nuts.
How do you use it?
Yeah, I used the snail one, and I actually the snail one would be good. What I noticed when I used the snail one is the snails actually stayed away for a bit. You know what I mean? Like it sensed like oh shit, like fuck, bro, I don't know about that zone, you know? But so the snails kind of stayed away. Yeah, fuck, bro, some mass murder going on around there.
You grind it up, is that what you did?
You could smash them, but I just threw them in whole just because I was like over the whole process and just kind of wanted to get it done with. But that would make the calcium more available because their shells are full of chitin and calcium. Just like your WCA and your chitin extracts that you can make with the K&F recipes. Well, we're getting a lot of that, just like the bones of the fish are full of calcium and whatnot. We're getting that from the shell too. And yeah, that's just some K&F nutrients ready to be applied. That's me drinking some of the OHN.
Some Fireball.
Yeah, little morning Fireball. And just like showing, like if you spray constantly, you get, you know, more uniform racks. Remember Drake was saying he noticed when he didn't spray, there'd be less fruit on the tree. And these are just like, I'm just showing you fertility. Pineapple season coming on right now.
Fire.
Yeah, and just, you know, just,
So fire.
you know, just encouraging you guys to, you know, seek abundance, and very little effort goes into producing that much food, you know. Peaches in Hawaii.
You grow peaches?
Yeah, we got it's like this tropical peach variety.
Grow apples too.
An apple?
We got these apples on our land that were like this hybrid from Florida that grows in the tropics also. Taro, soursop, food patch. Showing some mulching technique here in this garden bed. The banana mulch. And just using that in all the walkways. You could also cover it with county mulch after and wood chips if you really wanted to make a nice thick layer and a weed protection. Just showing these eggplants and just like, you know, not too much involved. Some cannabis.
My medicine.
The stuff right there. Mac 1. Some hash, just showing you, you know, the possibilities of you know, when you do these methods, you also get to participate in the highest grade products made from them, you know, whether that be your papayas or your cannabis, where if you didn't have these methods, you might not even be able to produce that resin, you know?
Well, that, and it's just yours, you know what I mean?
100%. Yours is the best. So the plants you grow, so when someone's like, oh, I got the best cannabis, it's like, of course you do, for you.
Right.
But I got the best for me, you know? And you can't debate me on that either. Because I won't smoke yours, I'll smoke mine. I don't care what it looks like or smells like, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And mulching in between rounds. So that's like under a greenhouse, and I'm just showing these techniques. Sprouts, utilizing sprouts. You can make tinctures out of sprouts. You can blend that up with water, add it to a compost tea, get all the enzymes, benefits from sprouts. Worm castings, essential. We're going to do a class where we'll go over how to make one of these. Worm casting bed for the highest grade. Just more like that, $50 for 2 cubic feet in the store. Or wait, 1 cubic foot, 1.5? 1.5 cubic feet for $50.
And it's not even as activated or active.
It's from some giant weird worm farm in the mainland where they like whip their worms with and feed them cardboard, you know?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
So
And the good stuff actually costs way more.
it's just a full tent of cannabis. That's that from the class that we did with Dragonfly Earth Medicine out there. We made that tea, just showing you some more ways to extract nutrients from nature and to team up with nature.
Did you have a bubbler on that? Was it?
No, so what? Remember the Dragonfly Earth Medicine? You let it go about 72 hours or until you got a lot of activity and a good little stink going, and then you bubble it. Yeah, and then you strain it and bubble it for 24 hours. Just showing you different possibilities with small crop and cover crop. You don't have to grow big plants. I don't know why. This was just from the natural farming class. We're pretty much done now, but showing you these daikon over here. And what I liked about this picture, it shows, you see all this and how it's all bug damaged?
Right. But it's not.
But yeah, exactly.
Right.
Thriving.
Right. So it's kind of like if we talked about that last class, like if you give the enough good cover crop and there's bugs down there, it's not a big deal as long as they're not up there, you know, and if you have habitat and food for them, they're not going to bother your crop of choice. More greenhouses, pollinator plants, letting your cover crops go to seed and produce either your own seed on your own farm to regenerate cover crop and to also attract bugs. We talked about mulching in place last week. This was an orchard we did that transferred it from chemical to all K&F and natural farming using cover crops and mulch as our keys. And they also did a weekly K&F compost tea. And we built a IMO4 pile on their land and also incorporated that into their teas. We use this method of thick cardboard and mulch, which is going really well. And just to show you, this was the beginning when we first started planting this farm. Lemongrass borders. They went with some white pineapples in one section as their cover crop.
Sweet.
So the rows there, that's the owner. You guys beyond stoked.
Heck yeah. See that smile.
Right.
The guy sent me a message basically crying
Cool.
that he didn't think he would ever be able to let his grandchildren into his orchard.
Right. Yeah. Pesticides.
That's what farming was prior to natural farming to this family, right? Was him as a grandpa thinking my grandchildren aren't allowed in the orchard because we just sprayed.
Right. Or my dogs.
Or anything. And so now the children get sprayed with what they spray on the orchard.
Oh yeah.
And here as it is growing in a little bit, you know. You got all this taro and cassava growing. Here's some of their first harvest. And I want to show you real quick before we leave just or before we go to lunch, because it looks like it is lunchtime. This shared album. And this is, I'll just show you some of the farm kind of coming in now. This is months later. Hopefully that doesn't stay so blurry. Their white pineapples are flowering. They got habitat going on. None of these bananas were there before. Look how everything's really healthy, and you still get, it's okay, we have some beetle damage on here, but it doesn't matter because the whole plant used to look like that.
Right.
Now we have all this flush of growth. We can let the edges go to the beetles. It doesn't matter. They're not going to affect our fruit production, you know? So it's not about killing every single beetle. It's about balancing the beetle where the pressure doesn't matter anymore. So just to go through here, you know, banana right next to their cacao. Just creating shade. These cacao is supposed to be in shade. They had them in full sun.
Now it's more just like maintenance and the growth.
Yeah, and like that's all that old mulch layer that had the cardboard. Now they just got to kind of weed whip through here, and then keep applying mulch every few months. Everything's fruiting now. They've been harvesting now. I've been following them on Instagram. They've been harvesting their first crops. That's like a teenage field. You can see the prep work starting, and now they got to implement habitat and shade and stuff. You know, they got some work to do in that section. Here's that lemongrass that we planted. Look at that cover crop. Now they got to just chop and drop that in place. They don't got to come with a bunch of mulch in that area anymore, and they don't got to mow or worry about weeds in that area. They can just mow their path or weed whip their path. Super basic. The little daughter is out there. Chilling. Right. Look at that. We got taro coming up in here. Cassava growing. That's kind of like a comparison there to one that got the lemongrass and one that didn't. Yeah, you kind of get the gist of it, huh? Just got to create that habitat, and you get healthy trees and lots of fruit. Now they got a bunch of biomass to use as mulch in place. Instead of taking the county mulch, they get to cut way back on that now and just use biomass that they planted. Banana chunks, FPJ material.
You can use a Harper implement for FPJ.
Really, really good one is a banana flower for an FPJ, especially something that's flowering or about to flower. That's their helper, a cool community member. But yeah, any questions on the mind of a natural farmer, their daughter out there harvesting? And like I said, you can still see some of the pest pressure, but they're harvesting a lot of good fruit. And the pests are out of mind now. You know, they're not a burden. Before they were so worried, they kept spraying and spraying and spraying poisons, you know. Gotta kill it, gotta kill it, gotta kill it. But then we put their mind at ease and they've been harvesting. And now they get to eat white pineapple, they get to eat bananas, they get to make chocolate dipped bananas, chocolate dipped white pineapple. Their business just exploded from being a conventional cacao farm to a right.
Yeah.
They'll be giving food away to their neighbors, I guarantee it.
Exactly.
All right, any questions on that vibes, on the mind of a natural farmer? What's up?
Oh, the soil. You're saying that the guy in town had the soil?
Yeah.
What's the name of that?
Organic Matters. And the guy's name's Dean or Dino.
And where is that located?
It's at the bottom of Palisades.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's the one that I would get for sure. And just ask, try to be specific. Say, make sure my soil, the compost is as old as possible. I take classes with Logan, so he'll take you more serious,
Now, what was the one I'm asking for, the landscape?
No, you want the 1/3 potting soil blend.
1/3 potting soil blend.
Which again is not potting soil, but that's how he sells it, yeah. And then you're gonna take that home and mix it 1-to-1 or 50-50 with peat moss. And now you got potting soil. And
Easy to find peat moss.
not super easy. Farm and Garden usually will have it by the bale. Hilo has a lot more than Kona. But when all else fails, just get a bag of Pro Mix. It has pH buffering agents in there, so you won't have to worry about adding too much calcium or any lime or anything like that to buffer the pH. But it does have the perlite, which is fine for a nursery. I wanted to make that point too.
Right.
Perlite in a nursery and small potted plants isn't a big deal at all. Once you get a living soil bed going like that, that's when those things become a nuisance. And then also, like, I've had students like send me pictures like, oh, I thought you said worms don't like perlite. And like they're showing me like they're opening up this bag and there's worms all over in it and there's perlite all over in it. And it's like, of course they're gonna still do their job as best they can, but
They're just getting hurt.
right. And like, what do we want to make it easy for them and conducive and a good environment? Then just, you know, follow the protocol and don't put the glass in the, you know, because that's what the perlite's expanded glass. It's just glass puffs, you know. So anyway, not so bad for a nursery setting though, where you're just growing in pots and then you're going to transplant out of those into your bed or something. Any other questions? So what we'll do is we'll take a quick lunch break and just revamp and get ready for Jeff.
Cool.
And Jeff's going to go up. He's got about an hour presentation of some really cool analytics about Kona's soil and water concerns, what pesticides do to the soil, and he's got some really cool packets of a bunch of information and handouts to give to everybody. So definitely stick around for that, and we'll just be back here in like, 20, 30 minutes. Sound good? Cool, we'll give thanks. Welcome back, everybody. We're going to have a special guest today. The final class of the Surviving and Thriving in a Brave New World July series. Man, give thanks. It's been a really strong month, and I'm thankful for all the students coming through. And I know, like the mycelium, we're just going to take this information and spread it. It's a positive takeover. Today we got our special guest, Jeff Knolls. He's here representing Kona Soil and Water Conservation District. He's also an avid farmer, and he's also known to go abroad farming with the Farmer to Farmers program. He's done a lot of farming in Africa, Southeast Asia, all over the world. But he's here to share with us a presentation, slideshow presentation, some analytics, some statistics, and some firsthand know-how of what's going on in Kona and the future of Kona's ag. So,
Thank you so much, Logan. Right on. I got to really thank Logan and what he's doing here with the school. From my perspective, it's absolutely fantastic that we have more hands-on educational, information available for farmers. As Logan said, I've had a lot of experience, 40 years experience internationally and domestically. I spent the 80s in the Soil Conservation Service in Iowa, so I got to work with a lot of the farmers in Iowa. Spent the 90s in Wisconsin working with dairy farmers, wide variety of conservation practices. I transferred to Kona in 2002. It was a culmination of a lifetime dream. It took a lot of perseverance, and after 25 years of working with the USD, I made it to Kona. So I started in 2002, and I got to meet a lot of farmers right off the bat. A lot of the ranchers, 2 old-time ranchers, Billy Paris, Sherwood Greenwell, some of these old-time guys. I was really fortunate to get a good feel for Kona's histories from some of these old guys, these old kapunas. Anyway, I also got a good feel for some of the unique problems we have in Kona, and they're very different than anywhere I've experienced anywhere in the world. I retired a little prematurely. After 30 years, I decided to leave in 2010. It was kind of because of an experience I had. In 2004, USDA was recruiting agricultural advisors to go work with military boys in Afghanistan. The DOD was there in a country full of farmers, and they didn't know how to work with them. So they asked the USDA to come help. So out of the blue, I took the announcement home. I read it. It's like, holy crap, I got to do this. I took it home, and it's what I've been doing the last 25 years. My wife agreed, you got to do this, don't you? So I did. I spent 6 months in Afghanistan, embedded with some military boys, working with farmers. Incredible experience. It changed my life totally. I came back. I couldn't do this job no more. My mind was elsewhere. I did have an opportunity to do a detail with USDA on the Republic of Palau as well, once again working with farmers. I left in 2010 to kind of pursue my lifelong dream, which really was working internationally. And since that time I've done, excuse me, I have a tendency to talk pretty fast at times, so you have to forgive me. I've done 20 short-term international assignments. Most of them been through the USDAID's Farmer-to-Farmer program, as Logan mentioned, which is a tremendous program. And one day I would like to come back and talk just specifically about that program, because I think we're probably in the USAID is probably in about 60 or 70 countries around the world, primarily in tropical areas. The farmers in Hawaii are perfect for this program, probably more so than anywhere else on the U.S. mainland. But anyway, over the last 10 years, Uganda, Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Dominican Republic, a number of countries, primarily on soil and water conservation and soil quality. I first learned about Korean natural farming maybe 3 years ago, and I was totally blown away. My entire career has been on soil conservation, the study of the soil, something I'm very passionate about. But honestly, I feel like I've been missing a whole lot because I've missed this teachings through the Korean natural farming. Nevertheless, when I went abroad, I would talk to farmers about soil conservation, microbes, mulching, all the things that are good for soil quality, which a lot of it is kind of tied with Korean natural farming. So anyway, I'm here to talk about Kona primarily. I'm with the Kona. Yes, go ahead.
What exactly was it about Korean natural farming?
You know, the ability, what's the missing puzzle for me is teaching farmers how they can make their own fertilizer. And some of these are huge. It's just unbelievably huge because they really struggle with good quality seed and lack of fertilizers. And in many cases, I found that when I would talk to them about just composting, I was reminding them of things they told me later that they did 50, 60 years ago, and they gradually made changes. Their parents did some of the concepts behind Korean natural farming. Even though that term was not used, they knew how to make fertilizer out of plants.
So people had just been trained to buy it from the store?
Just recent changes, of course, with modern agriculture and the push for fertilizers and such, GMO seeds and all that. Modernization of agriculture is happening everywhere in the world. That's not necessarily good. And from my perspective, it's not. Here in Kona, okay, my passion is soil and water conservation. I'm a board member with the Kona Soil and Water Conservation District. We're kind of a quasi-state entity. We're part of the DLNR. There are 3,000 soil and water conservation districts around the country. And we're supposed to help guide the federal government's presence here in Kona. Here in Kona, we do have a presence of USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service. That's what my career was with. They're here in Kona, and they do work with farmers and ranchers on a wide variety of conservation. They come out to your property, give free technical advice. A lot of the emphasis now is on soil quality improvement. Last year, $4.5 million was brought into Kona to help pay for the cost of a wide variety of practices for farmers. Tree plantings, mulching, they pay $6,000 an acre to bring in mulch. 4 inches of mulch is a lot of mulch, and you're going to earn that money. But nevertheless, we do have a presence here that many people aren't aware of. And the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service works primarily with farmers and ranchers. So non-farmers don't get any expertise from them. I've been on the board now for about 9 years, and what I see in Kona, I feel like we have some pretty good expertise going to our farmers and ranchers. More and more farmers are learning about it each year. But I feel like also the non-farm community, we're doing some really bad things here in Kona, and I feel like we need some really strong educational effort going on. So one of the goals the district has is to, we're in the process to develop a 5-year plan that basically, we're trying to address things that we feel aren't being addressed now. Spraying of Roundup community-wide on roadsides, residential properties, out of control. There's a number of other things that are kind of out of control. So we mainly want to work with the non-farm community and address and let them know what some of our issues are. I've done about 15 of these processions community-wide over the last 2 years, most recently before the county council. So thank you again, Logan. And any way you can help get this word out would be greatly appreciated. So thank you. Basically, this presentation is based on this. We wrote this. You can each keep a copy. And please, if you don't want paper at your house, just give it to somebody who may use it. If you're done with it, we don't have a lot of copies. And I feel like the message is quite important for Kona. One of the things that I try to do when I'm working internationally, and here as well, is to let people know, hey, there's something that we can do to address global environmental change. farmers have a huge role in doing this. If you could just take a few minutes and read the letter on this first page, just to kind of give you a motivation on why we're doing this, part of the motivation, and then we'll go right into the presentation. Basically, we need to let people know around the world that we can address this global environmental change, and it starts here right at home. I appreciate one of the comments that you made. You know, we make change, we hit here at home, and we can do that here in Kona.
Pretty amazing, Bridget.
Yeah.
You guys read this?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What have we been talking about in this school the whole time?
Yep.
And then he's coming now from the state side. This is coming from the Water Conservation District. Just to clarify and to confirm everything we've been ingesting. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. And we're just kind of right at the beginning of what I consider a community-wide education program. You know, from my perspective, I've worked in a lot of communities around the United States. I find Kona really disconnected. You know, we have a lot of different ethnicities here. I just find a lot of disconnection, and I find it very difficult to have a community-led project. And so for me, this has been quite challenging. I feel like I've been beating my head against the wall. You know, like I said, I've been 15 presentations. Have I made a difference? Yeah. It sure don't seem like. Sometimes it just don't seem like it. But anyway, I'm going to continue on with this, and I want to just give you an idea where we're heading in the future, and hopefully this will help you give you some insight into what I think is important. So Hawaii is indeed a very fragile environment. And I'm going to talk today about Kona's resource concerns and some of the challenges. Kona, along with Kau and Puna, of course, as you guys know, is some of the youngest landscapes anywhere in the world. And our landscape is one of many highly fractured layers of rocks and soils. Okay, we're sitting on a flow. I don't know when this flow happened. Was it 10,000 years ago? I don't know. But underneath that flow, how deep is this flow? Is it 10 feet? Is it 20 feet? What's underneath that? Well, another landscape that developed over who knows how long, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. That landscape was buried. By how much? So we have these layers of landscapes with vegetation, that was underneath it. How many? I don't know. But our topsoils here in Kona, it doesn't have the capability to store high quantities of nutrients and chemicals. That's what makes us extremely more different than other parts in the U.S. mainland. We're extremely highly susceptible to contaminants leaching into the groundwater and the surface of the ocean waters. Highly susceptible. The deforestation of native vegetation is one of the major issues over the last couple hundred years. Invasive species I want to talk about a little bit. Population of the Big Island, 1970, what was it? I think it was 72, the population was 62,000, and now it's over 200,000. And a good share of that growth has come on the Kona side through resorts, homes, businesses. Kona in the early 70s, late 60s, this was farm country and coffee lands. There wasn't much else here, this Kailua Kona, but this wasn't much here. And this build-up here in Kona, in my opinion, has not been done properly. These lands are very lava flows along the ocean. They come in, they smooth that down, they put some cinder soil on top, they plant grass, and all of a sudden they're throwing nitrogen fertilizer. Who knows what's going on with the pollution of the ocean waters. But I consider it a major issue. Chemical herbicides to control weeds are widely used on new and old lands, on residential, commercial, and agricultural lands. This is mind-boggling to me. I was in Iowa when Roundup herbicide came out in the early 80s, and it did allow farmers to make some changes from moldboard plowing, severe soil erosion, massive soil erosion, conservation tillage, no-till, Roundup herbicide. If there was positive, it did allow farmers to shift from a terribly erosive type of farming style to a style where erosion was seriously reduced. Nevertheless, when I see properties, families spraying their residential properties, hundreds and hundreds of, I don't know if you've noticed, check it out sometime. Go to some of the new subdivisions, some of the old Japanese subdivisions. A lot of homes, bare soil, bare rock, I should say. And it's kind of I think for some folks, it's kind of a cultural thing. I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and a lot of homes there had bare soil. And it was kind of a Zen type thing. I don't want to criticize anybody at all either. We do have over 800 farmers here in Kona as well that grow coffee, mac nuts, wide variety of fruit.
Well, it's kind of like the typical, yard in the United States would have that nice grassy lawn.
Right.
Nicely cut green and
Right.
whatnot, you know what
Right.
I mean? Well, initially, you know, it's actually a lack of use of your land, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Rather than
right.
having
Right.
food,
Yeah.
food and, you know what I mean, stuff that actually
Right,
makes
what-
sense.
Right, and then it's like, I don't want to keep maintaining this, let's just poison it until there's nothing to maintain.
Well, you know, I heard too that, you know, back in the day, a lot of young men and women grew up pulling weeds on their coffee farm. And when herbicides came, it changed everything around the way. It made things easier. It just plain simple did. If you were a farmer and you worked your butt off pulling weeds, it was easier.
Making coffee or
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
We've kind of got carried away and we've kind of lost something.
Connection.
We've lost the ability to read the frickin' label instruction is one thing. And the labels, my goodness, they're written by a lawyer, I think, 20, 30, 40 pages, very fine print. But there are some 4 or 5 things that we've forgotten. And many people that spray don't even know that's part of the labeling requirement. Anyway, let's move on this. Like I said, I'm going to talk about some of what I consider the primary resource concerns and the practices everyone should be following, whether you're a residential owner, whether you're a farmer, anybody that owns land needs to take care of the land. So these 4 primary resource concerns: soil degradation, loss of native forest and forest fragmentation, invasive species, and the water resources of Kona. And not that there aren't other resource concerns here in Kona, but these are the ones I'm going to talk about. All right. So let's go to soil degradation. Approximately 20 to 25% of the 800 farms in Kona have little to no topsoil on the ground surface. Okay, it's rocks. And the same is true for hundreds, I'm going to say thousands of residential properties and business lots. Public parks and public roadways. We have a brand new county facility. Check out their property, mostly bare rock. Lack of ground cover combined with decades of herbicide spraying have degraded the topsoils, leaving a rocky soil. The loss of organic matter has resulted in the destruction of habitat for soil microbes and insects, seriously damaging the health of the soil.
The water table too.
It absolutely has, yeah. According to the USDA's soil survey, 75 to 80% of Kona's soils are formed from organic matter. Okay, the lava rock hasn't had a chance to break down. Vegetation growing on the lava rock forest has deposited the leaves, whatever. And over a period of millennia, not millennia, hundreds of thousands of years maybe, that deposition of organic matter has created the topsoil we have on 75 to 80% of our farms. The other 20, whatever, ash deposits from major eruptions. But the organic soils of Kona are unique and you need to continually add to organic matter, otherwise you're going to lose their quality. Not only through soil erosion, but through soil volatilization. So we kind of got the double whammy here. Bare soils, not only will they erode from excessive water erosion, they'll volatilize over it. Like a pile of leaves will basically volatilize. A lot goes up the atmospheric carbon and some of it goes down into the organic matter. But these soils in Kona are extremely susceptible to soil erosion. Probably more susceptible than any soil I've worked for in the world. And there's thousands and thousands of soils worldwide. And I say this every time I make this presentation, some of the most serious soil degradation problems we have in the United States, and there are some serious ones, are happening here in Kona. Soil degradation. So soils left bare, as I mentioned, will erode and volatilize, resulting in the destruction of the soil, the topsoil particularly. And it's easy to see in the low elevations in North Kona. If you drive from the airport up to Waikoloa, you see old lava flows, that are real visible on the highway. And we think we're seeing kind of new flows, but many of these flows, the dryland forest that was on that, gone. And the soil that was under that dryland forest is also gone because of soil volatilization.
Are you serious?
I am. This was the majority of this entire coast was dryland forest, up to 1,000 feet.
That and the sandalwood removing out.
Right.
All that barren land on the way out to airport and past had a woodland, a dry land.
Unless it was indeed a very new flow. But how?
It was a very new flow.
Yeah, within under 200. It is crazy. It really is crazy. And you know, 90% of dry land. Yeah.
Mahani Nile was up a little bit higher and stuff like that. You know,
Now
so
you get all the houses.
the sandalwood, the Iliahi was all in there and stuff like that. So.
But the dryland forest,
Imagine seeing that.
yeah, it would have been incredible.
It would have been incredible. It would have been like Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah, yeah, it really would. And there was supposedly more diversity in the dryland forest of Kona than the upland forest. And you know, worldwide, the dryland forest, bam, same thing, 90-95% dryland.
Planet.
Yeah, it really is an issue. I found this very enlightening. When I found this out, I was like, oh my God, I really began to understand how fragile these frickin' soils are. And now there's fountain grass going on. Is that good? I think it is, because it's holding the soil. I will talk a little bit more about the importance of ground cover, and especially as it relates to atmospheric sequestration, carbon sequestration. Okay, so yes, the dryland forest of Kona, pretty much done for. This map doesn't really show it really good, but it's supposed to show the vegetation before humans and after humans. Talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about forest cover and fragmentation. As I said, 95% of the dryland forest is gone. About 50% of the upland forest in Kona is also gone. Most of that has been gone to, to grasslands as a result of cattle grazing, of course. And the loss of forest cover, I don't think we really know the amount of birds that have gone extinct on this island. Incredible. The amount of birds on this island, native birds, was unbelievable. And I think that the destruction of the bird it started happening when the Hawaiians came. It wasn't just us white boys, but some of the feathers, yeah. And they were all ground, primarily, not all, but many of them were ground nesting birds. So there were, of course, many birds that could fly up Mauka too, but.
I would say more of those ones would have been from the native, the ground birds.
Yeah, the grounds they sure did.
They never killed them though.
But that's what I wanted to say about the Cape ones.
Yeah.
And that's how the stories go. That we hear is that they plucked one or two feathers and let them go, and that was part of the sacred ritual. But like he said, I think that the ground-dwelling birds that could have been translated maybe as food or. I don't know, I'm just guessing.
Or just environment, the environment.
Well,
or the environment shifting to support those species, yeah.
And the Hawaiians brought mammals with them, and they contributed to the destruction of habitat.
And the king too, right? Because before Kamehameha, there was Umialuloa, and he's actually the first king that supposedly united all the islands before King Kamehameha. King Kamehameha just had the white man backing them up, and writing about it, you know what I mean? So I think it's just the teachers, because they finally realized ultimately that they were killing what they had, and ultimately found that the cycle of, maintenance the birds, having them being plucked and using like the saps to catch the birds, to actually go harvest them and then pluck the feathers that they needed and letting them go. That's something that the process that they learned as well, right? It's kind of like Logan over here is like, well, I have this theory that if we do this, it'll help us out.
Right.
So we can have because like back in the day over here, Akua used to have like 300,000 people in that area. You know what I mean? So that's more than this whole population on the island. So, yeah. So I mean, it's just
good thoughts. Good
thoughts. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, man. All right, so restoring native forest is a big priority for the Natural Resources Conservation Service as well as the state of Hawaii, DLNR. We've done some good work. Nature Conservancy have a couple properties, got them fenced out. The big Honanao forest has been fenced out. We continue to, in fact, I think nearly half of that $4.5 million I mentioned that came into Kona last year was for native plantings, native tree plantings. It is a major focus. I'm going to give you all a booklet that we developed, native plant booklets. We try to encourage people to plant native trees, and that's one we pay for 90% of the cost as well.
You still got a lot of the nursery, or I know one or two nurseries were trying to do a lot of native plants at one point.
Future Forest up Kolokomauko, they do a pretty good job. Jill Wagner, if you know her. I don't know about.
I even saw at Lowe's and or at Home Depot they had like a native plant section that
nice.
was supplying. You know what I mean? So
I got to go there.
Hobby that was transferring over to all natives.
Yeah, so just keep an eye out for that when you're looking to landscape your yard or something.
For sure, there's some great native plants out there, and some of them grow pretty darn fast. Even Ohias grow fast, I think.
Every plant you need, you can find here. You know,
right?
As far as like decorational food.
Right.
You know, it could be from Hawaii
Yeah.
rather than bringing in something else.
Right,
You know, that
right.
ultimately would take over that variety or whatever.
Yeah. I guess the key point on this is there's a lot of help available for private landowners, especially.
It's getting those private landowners to work with you.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the biggest
yeah.
thing, because they have so much balls that they want to juggle.
Right.
That, you know, conservation is just one more ball.
Yeah, you know, it's changed quite a bit. When I came here in 2002, our office had really never done anything. We never had any cost share programs. And I got here at the same time the 2002 Farm Bill came, which basically allowed for underserved areas such as Hawaii to do things that had never been done before. Instead of just allowing, helping corn farmers with certain practices, we could bring in mulch to improve our soil quality. And I tell you, that first couple of years, people did not want to work with me at all. You're with the government, man. Right. But over the last, what's been, 18 years, we've got a good reputation. People are hearing about us. Still, very few people within Kona realize there's a conservation out here that provides technical and financial service. For what it's worth. Invasive species.
Just like scholarships with kids, right?
Right.
You know, there's so much scholarships out there available that you got to use your ability to apply yourself.
That's
right?
true. Yeah. Going into invasive species, I think it's important to recognize about 90% of the land below 1,500 feet is introduced or invasive species. All sorts of new species, trees, shrubs, grasses, legumes, insects, birds, hooved animals, weeds. It seems like we get a new species every year, whether it's an insect, whether a weed. These things keep coming somehow. I think we need to do a lot more inspections of our container ships coming in with thick and food supplies and such. It's kind of way out of control. As you guys know, Hawaii is the invasive species capital of the world, or pretty close to it. Invasive species seem to vary in elevation. Fountain grass, as I mentioned, covers a big part of the North Kona's low elevation. Tropical grasses, elephant grass, grinny grass, low and mid-range, south and North Kona, all over the place. It's a bugger. And of course, we got invasive species always trying to find their way into native forest. That's the problem when anything gets removed in native forest. If any bare soil allows seed to come in, and introduced species can outcompete most of these native species we have on the island. Mentioned a few of the names at the bottom. You guys have probably run into a few of these.
Vines. I hate vines.
Yeah. And Christmas berry, of course, lantana, strawberry guava can all take land within a couple years. African tulip, that must grow 10 feet a year. It's pretty darn fast. Since I've been here, I know we've had maybe 4 or 5 new insects. Maybe coffee bearer have been around for a while. They probably those two, coffee berry borer and twig borer, probably been around for a long time. And
It's just that big drought.
yeah, and now we got rainfall, fungus is growing, CBB's down. But feral goats, we at NRCS, they try to promote, hey, you got bare rock out there, we'll pay for the cost of bringing in mulch. And after another year, let's put some grass seed on top. Ground cover, beautiful. Well, what happens? Pigs. All of a sudden, we create a smorgasbord for pigs, unless we fence the property.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're trying, and farmers many times are trying to do good things, and they do, only to have these like pigs come in. So we got pigs at once again mid elevation, goats down low, sheep up high. Like I mentioned, pigs are one of our biggest problems with getting conservation going. Whether you're establishing native plants, whether you're bringing in mulch, goats too. Worldwide, they're one of the biggest hindrances to deforestation. They're also one of the biggest causes of deforestation. They eat seedlings. They make reforestation problems miserable to impossible unless you shoot them or fence them out. And we do, of course, have quite an invasive species list in Kona. Not to mention introduced species. Water resources to Kona. We do have some of the freshest and purest water in the world. There's no denying it. We've got some great water. Also surrounded, our ocean waters are also some of the most beautiful in the world. I see no ocean water anything like we got here. But we are losing a lot of native forests, and our soils are degrading. And I think the quality of the water entering the ocean and our groundwater is not as clean as it wants to be. That's an understatement, I believe. Right now with the water department, there's not a lot of contaminants in our water supply. I think there are some excess levels of nitrates. When I talked to somebody recently, they said that we haven't found any glyphosate yet, was his comment. I have no question in my mind whether it's going to eventually reach there. I'm sure it's already reaching the ocean. So we got to be cognizant of what our forest loss and what our uses of herbicides and pesticides fertilizers are doing to our ocean waters, which don't, right now, it's like our heads in the sand. It's like it's not a problem. If we're not seeing it, it's not there. We're trying to raise this awareness, because if we don't, it will be. There is no doubt about it. Hawaiian,
Coral, right?
yeah, especially coral. Coral, I understand, is susceptible to glyphosate, but once again, proven that the parts per million is high enough to kill coral here in there hasn't been a lot of statistics proven,
Right.
which makes it kind of difficult to fight. Old Hawaiian proverb, rains always follow the forest. You know, I found in my experience, as lands deforested, rainfalls fall. I spent just half a year in Afghanistan, but I think that they were invaded by Russia somewhere in the late 70s, I think. Anyway, over a 30-year period, they lost like 30%, or like 60% of the remaining forest. And within that time period, their where I was at, half of the district was completely deforested, and their rainfalls, they just dropped like that. Ethiopia, I was there a couple of years ago, 80% deforestation in the last 50 years. Rainfall patterns down. Uganda, same thing, 80% deforestation. Anybody that says the forest don't affect the rainfall, I think is mistaken. Anyway, the Hawaiians believed it, and they had that saying. I know many Kona farmers, they had record rainfalls. They were checking their rainfall records since the 20s. And there was a belief that in Akua, a lot of deforestation occurred up that piece. And you know, where I live, close to Dismakai McDonald's, we're getting probably a little less than half of the rain that the folks below Honana Forest.
Yeah, Honolulu is like that rainbow.
It is, and I think at one time Akua was the same way. If you go back to the old.
The ulu belt, right?
Yeah.
That's why the Hawaiians actually planted that ulu, because going to the Ahupua'a system,
Right.
Kona didn't really have that the river, you know what I mean, the flowing water.
Right.
So they actually brought it by planting Kahu'ulu.
Oh, nice.
The belt, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, the floodways in Kona too, you know, they're not formed. They're what do I say? Because we don't have perennial rivers, they can't handle peak storms. They're really narrow, shallow floodways. They might be a ditch like this, but when you get 5 or 6 inch rain, it's so common for these floodways to basically flood over and jump and go everywhere. Our land is, anytime there's work done in Mauka, basically the landscape can be changed really easily. You can change runoff patterns really easily. So flooding in Kona is also kind of an issue, and will continue to be an issue. Herbicides. Now once again, I go back to 30 years experience with USDA, and my opinion on this is generally changing. I will say more, as the more I learn, the more I change. But the general belief is chemical herbicides, if applied correctly, are generally safe. Okay. Kona soils are not like, Roundup, for instance. Roundup is considered one of the safest herbicides in the world. It's generally believed once the glyphosate hits the soil surface, clay, silt, and sand, it basically neutralizes it, and so it can't go down. But Kona soils, we don't have the sand, silt, and clay particles like mineral soils on the mainland. We're organic soils. And when you destroy the organic matter on the surface, and our soils, they're acting more like a sieve than a sponge. Soils can soak up all sorts of poisons. They can soak up all sorts of chemical herbicides. Them little bugging microbes, they can eat them herbicides up even. But we really need a different set of labeling requirements for Kona, because our soils are just completely different than what the label was made for. And that's my problem with the overuse of Roundup that I see here in Kona.
So you're basically saying that you would need way less, even if you were applying Roundup, the numbers we would need, and that would be conducive to our environmental impact would be way lower than they're allowed to use.
I think so.
Even on the label,
And
what people are using.
Even then, Logan, it's much more important that we do indeed follow the label. The problem is we're not following the label. For instance, you're supposed to spray, common sense would say you're trying to spray the herbicide on 100% weeds. You're not trying to touch any ground level. Well, the roadside spraying, and the county and the state both, and I've been in their face. I met with the supervisors from the county road crews and the state road crews. I've testified before the state Hawaii Senate in 2013. It's very difficult to make change. What I see so often happen with the county, they're spraying, there's maybe about 50% of the ground covered with weeds. The rest they're spraying the ground. Or they're spraying a 1-inch crack with a 6-inch band of Roundup. So much overspraying is occurring, not just, and I don't want to point fingers at the county, okay? We got they're working their butts off, okay? They don't have a choice, they got to spray the stuff. But they cannot, don't, at least follow the frickin' label requirements. Don't spray ground, don't spray bare rock. Don't spray a 6-inch crack with a 1-inch crack with a 6-inch band. Go ahead.
I actually just witnessed that down south. My mom lives down somewhere where they spray. And
Yeah.
I totally saw the guy spraying. I didn't say nothing. They're doing their job. I totally understood. But they didn't spray my grass, and I thought that was interesting. They came up, stopped, sprayed the telephone pole. There's a big weed on there. It's not our property. We can't cut that or whatever. But it was interesting because they did not spray the entire strip. But I was pretty mad because I already knew exactly what was coming out of the container.
Right.
And I was gonna ask my mom if we could even, like, is putting up a no spray sign okay, or is that you're still gonna spray?
Is it your roadside property?
I'm not really sure. It's just like the easement of the driveway.
Yeah, if it's your easement, technically what you're supposed to do, yes, you can put up a no spraying sign. It's supposed to be 4 by 17 inches, and you're supposed to put a piece of paper into the county. So they'll know, hey, don't spray this guy's property. He's registered, he's gonna take care of it. So technically that's how Hawaii handles it. You gotta put up the, and of course,
There's paperwork to it.
there is. It's
That's
the,
a big deal because that whole community gets sprayed.
That's how you could hold them accountable.
Because I'm at the point of that whole community got sprayed all day, and
yeah,
I have absolutely no idea how much
Yeah.
he sprayed. When he saw me, he sprayed one bush, but
Backed
after
off.
that,
Right,
yeah.
because he felt the accountability, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. So if
Like
you went
he-
through all that and filed that paperwork, and then you actually had some video of him spraying your yard after, now you could actually take an action that could hold accountability to the county and whatnot. But without filing that paperwork and just putting up the signs, you're hoping that they just be good humans and stop spraying when they see that sign. So however you want to approach it as a human being yourself, you could go about it any way, you know?
Well, go ahead.
Why are they spraying?
For weed control.
What if they didn't spray? What would
Well, then we grew up on the shoulder of the highway.
You, just about a couple months ago, you witnessed them not spraying for a good month, and there was basically weeds coming into the road on the highway. As you were driving down Hulualoa and down south, you're whacking weeds as you're driving on the highway.
If they came to you and said, we want to try something different, because in the news there's all this stuff around Roundup, glyphosate,
Yeah,
what do you suggest?
it would be super simple. You stop spending the money on the glyphosate and you put it into human beings to break with.
Yeah, you know,
It means to what?
weed whacking.
Yeah, that or like
Super simple.
when they're actually like cutting down the trees right there, they're actually
Wood chip 'em.
they have a mulcher that actually goes right back to underneath the trees that they're actually cutting down, rather than taking it down the road like 5 miles.
Right,
and
when you're
dumping
mowing
somewhere.
it, you're feeding that and you're changing the fungal dominance, so you're not gonna have those weeds eventually also.
The vast majority of Pacific Islands, and I've been to maybe a dozen Pacific Islands, and maybe a half dozen Caribbean islands. They don't use Roundup for road control. No islands that I've been to, other than Oahu's not as bad as Hawaii. Hawaii Islands the worst than there as I can tell. But some islands have banned glyphosate. Vast majority, weed whacking or machetes.
So is it,
When you don't have weed whackers, machetes.
can you see it as feasible that you could get a ban here now?
You know, yes, there is a lot of effort. Earlier this year, as you guys are aware, one of the county council people did submit a bill to ban the county from using Roundup. And it passed. It passed 6-9. The governor vetoed it. I mean, not the governor, the mayor, Kerry Kim, vetoed it. And the county council they could override his veto with the same 6-4 vote. And one of the guys had gotten some pressure, and he yeah. But anyway, I gave this same presentation to the county council 2 months ago.
So all those people that voted saw this presentation?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Yeah,
And
that stuff.
no, it's going to have to be reintroduced, and it probably will be next year.
And now they have this information.
And now they have this, and they have this and a lot more.
Good.
So,
Right, thanks.
yeah, you bet. You know what kind of got me really pissed off about this? I had kind of just retired. I was driving my motorcycle on the King Cam, the new bypass, right? I don't know what it's called, but there must have been like a major cleanup. If there's like 10 county trucks there, And a spray guy, he was spraying like 50 feet or so. I'm on my cycle, I drive by it, and a big gust of wind comes up, scream me. And I knew the road, the chair of the guy who supervised the road crew, and I go, Dale, what the? Oh, don't worry, Jeff. We put a surfactant in it. I go, Dale, you know what the surfactant makes it spread around the leaf or your body skin, but more. You didn't do anything to appease me. So then I got involved with the Soil and Water Conservation District, and kind of this became one of my passions. So it was my career anyway. So
Nice.
absolutely. So once again, I believe that chemical herbicides in Kona are contributing to wide-scale soil degradation by destroying organic matter that would otherwise be added to the soil. The lost organic matter destroys habitat for soil microbes. If they don't have habitat, they can't live. Insects and worms, it basically degrades the soil. And in many cases, innocent bystanders are being exposed to chemical herbicides. The last time I read the labeling requirements on Roundup herbicides, specifically 4-hour minimum wait period. No one's supposed to walk over that area.
Yeah, right.
I live down a subdivision with little cakeys that walk to school along the roadsides. We don't have sidewalks. The county comes in, they spray the road in the subdivision. A half hour later, kids can be walking up and down. They don't know. And this is all of our roadsides. People walk, they drive bicycles. In my opinion, once again, going back to my early days of the 80s, when Roundup first started coming in, we weren't concerned about the liquid. We were concerned about the frickin' fumes. Can you guys smell Roundup? Am I the only one that can smell Roundup? Them fumes is what, in my opinion, is what's really bad for you. Supposedly the only real negative thing they've absolutely proven that glyphosate does to you, it kills your gut bacteria. They've proven that beyond a shadow of a doubt. Who says carcinogenic? Either here nor there. And my point when I met with the county road supervisors, as well as the state, as well as the state senate, in many cases people are being exposed to chemical herbicides by the county and the state.
That's why Kauai and Maui, like a lot of the women are starting to get like their the deformities and stuff like that, right? Like a lot of them are actually like winning in court now because of this information that's coming.
Well, not only that, but that's a different story. They're using other herbicides for plants that are being tested too. That's a different story. But yeah, so anyway, we got a lot of work to do, but there's a lot of positive things happening too. I think we got to realize that. Chemical herbicides, simple, read the instructions. If you're going to use herbicides, read them, okay? Check the wind conditions. Over 10 mile an hour, you shouldn't be spraying. And don't mix more concentrate than specified. A lot of the Roundup you get now it's ready to use. You don't got to mix anything. Wear protective clothing. It was very common. Still is to see people spraying Roundup with shorts and slippers. You should be wearing regular or something over your face. I wouldn't want to breathe that crap. Minimum hour drying time. Do not overspray. That's the problem we have in Kona. We have herbicide spraying occurring everywhere with no warning signs. It's criminal. It's against federal law. It's against the law what the county and state's doing. And not only that, and once again, here I am. I shouldn't say that quite like that, but
Plain and simple.
Okay, here's once again my passion and what really kind of is driving me to continue international work. The forest and the soils and what it has to do with climate change. The soil, along with the world's oceans and forests and grasslands, can play a huge role in addressing climate change. And all landowners, not just in Kona but worldwide, need to understand that anybody that owns lands can address climate change by keeping soil covered with grass, mulch, tree, anything that keeps that soil covered is going to allow carbon sequestration to occur. And if you have microbes in the soil, they're of course some carbon creatures. All organic life on Earth, I think, is organic based. I heard one time that a healthy soil has the weight of the microbes under the soil is heavier than the weight of life above the soil. Now I have to get the article and see if I can find a little more on that, because I found that entirely amazing. But leaving soil exposed and uncovered contributes to climate change because carbon stored in the soil, poof, it goes right up. So the role of forests and soils in climate change. The carbon cycle teaches, this is elementary, guys. It teaches us that as carbon is released through human activity, whether it's burning stuff, whatever the case may be, the released carbon is sequestered right back down to the earth by forest, organic matter, ocean waters, and soil. Forests, soils, and oceans, those are our major carbon banks in the past. While the media, and this bothers me tremendously because I've spent a lot of I've done a lot of traveling worldwide, and I see nobody talking about this. But I don't see any effort or any public education going. It's all about burning fossil fuels. How many cars are being driven? But I don't hear any talk about the carbon cycle and what the forests and the soils and the ocean waters can do us. The World Wildlife Federation estimates that over the last 50 years, 75% of the world's tropical forest, the Tropic of Cancer, the coffee belt, the area of the world where our plants year-round can suck in the carbon, 75% of our forests are gone. This is worldwide, tropical forest. Clearing, and this is still happening today in many third world countries. Uganda a couple years ago, these guys had told me that they just cleared this one hillside to make frickin' charcoal because that's their only source of cooking. Now, natural gas and propane is going to many of these areas, but when half the world is reliant upon charcoal because they don't have any other source of fuel, you kind of get a different perspective of why this is occurring. But so what's happening? Okay, so all this land is being, we hear about the deforestation that's still occurring in Brazil. Sub-Saharan Africa is out of control. Nearly every one of those countries, 50, 60, 70, 90% of the forest gone. And not only that, as the land is cleared, whether it's to make charcoal, whether it's to sell lumber, the land is being farmed. I mean, we are growing as a world very quickly, and we need more farmland. The problem is so many of these lands are being farmed poorly. It's being left bare. So not only do we got the whammy of we're losing our forest, the soil can no longer sequester carbon because of poor farming practices. And I see it every frickin' country I go to. Last November, I was in Tunisia, 2-week assignment with a Fulbright specialist. It was kind of a cool thing, unusual. But I was working with orange farmers and pomegranate and olive tree farmers. And they had beautiful orchards, beautiful, well established. They've been there for decades. And one time I'm sitting out in the guest home and I'm looking at this beautiful olive orchard, and all of a sudden a mobile plow comes in and he plows this 40-acre field. I go, why is he plowing that field? It's an orchard. Well, because he's afraid the neighbor's going to bring a sheep in. He's going to eat the branches off his lower branches of his olive tree. I go, well, that's crazy. And for the next 3 days, I watched these flocks of birds annihilate these poor worms that have been brought to the surface. But that type of poor management practice is happening worldwide. And this was on orchard areas. So many of the poor farmers, like African farmers, they're growing crops like corn or beans, the edibles. But they don't know how else to grow the crops unless they do till the ground up. But so anyway. There does need to be a worldwide concerted effort to address poor farming practices, and I'm not seeing it now, but the problem is very solvable worldwide if we take worldwide action. So, best management practices here in Kona. Especially here in Kona, I think our environmental problems can be solved relatively quickly as long as we get that community-wide effort going. Landlords who do have degraded soil need to make some effort to rebuild that land. And the good thing about doing that, when you bring mulch in, you bring life in almost immediately. So you can make a change almost immediately by bringing in just mulch. Throw on a pile of mulch on a degraded soil, rocky soil, and things change quick. Planting ground covers of grasses, trees, combined with mulch causes almost an immediate improvement on any land in Kona. Best management practices, then I go back to everybody, in my opinion, should be practicing these, whether we're a farmer, whether we're a non-farmer. Conservation cover, keep the ground covered with grasses, trees, and shrubs, mulch, or compost. Keep your ground covered. What would Mother Nature do with a piece of bare land? It would cover itself, whether it was with weeds or anything else. So there's a case where we should follow Mother Nature. In Kona, adding the mulch. The county mulch, I don't know if anybody's used it. I think it's great stuff. I think it's a real service because in my opinion, adding this organic matter to the soils here is our #1 thing we have to do. Even if you have a pretty good soil now, keep that organic matter coming. And at any time, you're kind of a king of compost. I admire so much what you're doing. I'd love to come to your farm one time to look. Tree planting, of course, native trees particularly address climate change and keeps the watersheds healthy. Fencing, we need the fencing, as I mentioned earlier, to keep the animals out that destroy the ground cover and the other good management practices. Pest management. we need more integrated pest management. We shouldn't be just using herbicides. If you're going to use herbicides, use other type of pest control. Break out the freaking weed whacker. I mean, you don't got to kill everything with herbicides. Integrated. We got to think integration. We can use other pests to control pests. That's what that means. Nutrient management. We have too many people throwing on nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium without having any idea what their plant needs, without having any idea what nutrient levels are in the soil. You should get a soil test. You should get a leaf analysis. Because if you don't, especially nitrogen is one of those fertilizers, it goes down. As I said, nearly all wells in Kona do have some nitrate from excess nitrogen fertilization as well. And reducing chemical herbicides. If you're going to use it, once again, use it as a tool, not as the only means to control unwanted plants. So land stewardship, you touched on that earlier. But when I started with the Soil Conservation Service, it was in my head, it was ingrained in me. Jeff, we got to train farmers. And most farmers, I found most farmers to be good stewards. I didn't find any farmers who would intentionally do anything wrong to their property. But that leave the land in better condition than you found it. Not too many people do that on this island. Malama Aina, we all know what that means. Back in the 30s, whenever Franklin D. Roosevelt was around, might not have the right decades. A nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. And in the 30s, our country was heading that when the Dust Bowl days came. At that time, what really created the Dust Bowl is the government had opened lands in the West to settlement, and they basically were encouraging farming on lands that should never been farmed. And vast acreages were viewed, hey, you guys, come on, settle this land for us, start farming. We set them up for failure, and not only that, but we set our country up for a major disaster. And that's when the Soil Conservation Service formed, was I think in '37. That's who I worked for. I had a great career, and I don't know. To me, conservation is a given that everyone should be doing. I do have some information to give you, and I don't want to give you paper just for the sake of giving you paper, but there's a lot of good stuff here. And I'm giving this to you to give you a little. You'll see, maybe it was about 8 years ago that I started seeing information from the USDA about microbes. So this teaching that we're getting through the Korean natural farming is starting to come through with some of our people with the United States Department of Agriculture. And when I go overseas, I always make up 20, 30 of these folders, and I try to match the country that I'm going to. But I think some of the information here is pertinent to what we've been discussing today. And please use it if you can. If you don't, and you don't think you will use it, rather than waste the paper, give it to someone who may. That's all that I asked.
This is great.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, and I have one more short presentation. And I give this presentation to I think I've given it in 10 different countries, because it's something that is, once again, pertinent to any farmer anywhere. Very simple, very short. We'll just go into that real quick, and then I'll be done. Any questions about what I've talked? And before I go, hey, last summer, last summer, I'm in the Lions Club, and I met this group of high school students that were in the Leo's Club, and I told them what I was doing. Hey, I'm trying to get this. They were looking for projects, and I go, hey, I need help. I'm trying to get this message out. So I gave them this presentation, and they went into the booklet, and the 5 officers of that club developed 5 posters. And they go, Jeff, we want to help you. So I just want to share this with you, because this group of high school students went to our county council people, the 3 county council people, and said, hey, listen, we want to help the Soil and Water Conservation District educate our public. We want to change some of the bad things. So they put together these posters by themselves and wrote this letter. Now they're going to be sending this letter out to all the businesses in Kona sometime over the course of the year. We did get these high school kids got $7,500 to do this. I mean, it's not a huge chunk of change, but for me, it was so exciting to get an enthusiastic bunch of high school kids really wanting to make a difference. And I was just blown away by their enthusiasm. And
Young minds of tomorrow.
For sure. Yeah. So hey, just quickly, we'll go into this last little slideshow I got. Unlock the secrets of the soil. I just love it. Farmers love it everywhere I go. And I slapped this together in about 5 minutes based on one of the pamphlets you'll find in here. Am I hooked up?
Yeah, are you showing a signal there? You're showing a picture here?
I am, yes.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. So, as I mentioned, when I go to other countries, I usually work with farm organizations who've requested assistance in soil conservation, soil fertility. And so I usually have 3 or 4 PowerPoints or in many cases, flip charts, because many times I'm under a mango tree or I'm in an old schoolhouse with no electricity or old church, whatever. But I give this presentation every time I go to speak with a farm organization. And along with this folder, Unlock the Secrets of the Soil. 4 things. Keep the soil covered as much as possible. Just keep the soil covered with some type of organic matter. Even if it's a rock. Pull a rock over. What are you going to find out of the rock? You're going to find all sorts of critters, and even a rock. Just keep the ground covered as much as possible. Disturb the soil as little as possible. Tillage is not good for soil. Tillage destroys soil structure. And a lot of tillage really does damage to soil over a period of time. There's information on soil compaction in this booklet as well. And keep plants growing throughout the year. Kind of easy to do for us here in Hawaii. We have a tropical environment. Of course, not always easy in the temperate environments. And diversify as much as possible using crop rotations and cover crops. Okay? Where are we at now? Okay, managing your soil to increase microbial life is the easiest and most effective way to increase productivity and profitability. That's really huge, and that's a big thing to try to help farmers understand. Farmers generally they're a lot smarter than we sometimes give them credit for. They might not have a college education, they might not have a high school diploma even, but whoopsie, what'd I do? Okay, but they do get microbes. Increasing soil organic matter in the soil improves soil health. You're giving the microbes something to eat, you're giving them habitat. And a healthy soil hosts a vast array of insects, worms, and microorganisms. Healthy soils are full of life. One handful of healthy soil can have millions of different organisms in it. I mentioned earlier that, I shouldn't even say this again, but I did read an article one time that said a healthy soil, the weight of the microbes under the soil is more than the weight of the life above the soil. And it's really the microbes in the soil and healthy soil that can really, sequester this carbon that we really need worldwide. Okay, what type of species? Oh boy, lots. And if I had it all to do over again, I think I'd major in soil microbiology versus agronomy. But bacteria, fungus, protozoa, mites, nematodes, earthworms, others. I've heard over 3,000 species of bacteria in the soil. Only 1% have been identified. So much work needs to be done in soil microbiology that we don't even, as Logan mentioned, this esoteric term. We don't know. We don't know what we don't know. But and soil microorganism is one of them. Bacteria, they feed on organic matter, they store, they cycle nitrogen, they decompose pesticides. The fungi, they have, once again, up to 3,000 species in the soil, and they serve multiple purposes. They feed on organic matter, and they eat other microbes. They hold water, they make nutrients available to plants. They can spread their little things, tendrils or whatever you call them, out to mycelia, and basically, wrap around a root that can draw in nutrients. So, go ahead.
In the case of chanterelle mushrooms with the coastal live oak tree, what it is they have a true symbiosis where the tree gives the chanterelle sugars from photosynthesis in the leaves, and then the chanterelle intertwines with the fine root of the oak tree roots and gives it nutrients and water.
Nice.
So in the soil there's true symbiosis, and in the case of like chanterelle, if you find incredibly healthy oak trees, they'll yield like 20 pounds of chanterelles for one little area that's about half as big as this room. Just phenomenal amount. And then I'll tell you guys one of the secrets I used to do. I used to take the bad parts of the chanterelles, because every chanterelle has bad parts. You put it into a liquid solution with wood ashes and kelp and a few other things that I won't say. and then you boil superfine oxygen to it for like 3 days. So what you're doing is you're making a tea that has the microbes, the spores, already cracked open in it. So instead of getting 2 flushes a year, you get 7.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
And that's exactly what you're
Yeah,
talking about,
yeah.
in that it's a true symbiosis
Right.
that these bacteria have.
Soil food web.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Yeah, soil food web.
I would have loved to hear that. Didn't you have a speaker earlier the month that covered a lot of the
Yeah, we
microorganisms?
had a microbial class.
Wow, shoots. I missed that. Doggone it.
You too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thanks. You told me that. That's right. So the protozoa, you know, they eat mother microbes and unlock nitrogen. This web of life under the soil, I don't think we even really have got any close glimpse of how things are working. But once again, I go back to microbes. Soil is a big part of solving the world's problem that we have with climate change. We're killing our forests, we're killing the soils, and now the oceans, it's trying to make up for it by sucking in more carbon, and the pH level in some areas are going down. Fisheries in some parts of the world, clam production in Alaska is almost done because of the 1 degree in pH it went down because of
Really?
the ocean acidity that went down. Pretty crazy, and there's scary things that are happening.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, I just wanted to throw that in just because this is a K&F type of style class, and I just love I got a few more here. Nematoids, they're a microscopic worm and a part of the nitrogen cycle. Most are non-pathogenic. We always think of nematoids as mean, plant-eating things, but not all. Most of them not. They eat other microbes as well. You guys have heard this before, apparently. Earthworms, of course, eat organic matter, produce the nutrients and castings, and they also tunnel down. So as far as the soil structure, percolation into the soil, I gave this presentation to a bunch of students in Tunisia. One of the teachers said, microbes, there are soil engineers. So they really dug this talk. But anyway, you guys, that's all I got. Wait, one more or 2 more. I'm sorry. Keep getting ahead of myself. So a healthy soil, and I like to point this out too, because it's darker in color, crumbly and porous, and you should see worms and other organisms that squirm, creep, and crawl. And a healthy soil does have a sweet smell to it. If you've never smelled it, it's basically the smell of decay, geosum, I think it's called. It's a byproduct of soil microbes. And healthy soil is generally easy to dig. Usually, a mineral soil, if you got a shovel, it's harder and it's compacted from years and years of tillage. But a healthy soil, it's not going to be tilled, so it's going to be easy to dig, soft and crumbly. And of course, that allows plant roots to grow and suck in more nutrients, etc. So here's the other thing I would like to always point out. You should strive to keep the soil covered with growing plants and residues, or a combination of the two. And when you keep the soil covered with microbes, you offer food and shelter from microbes. And leaving the soil bare devastates the soil and greatly reduces microbial life. And when the falling raindrop hits bare soil, that's the first stage in the soil erosion process, detachment of soil particle. Water runs off, transportation. So that's it, for sure.
Could I just say one thing?
Absolutely.
Logan's favorite thing is covering the soil with 2 layers of cardboard works unfreaking real, because the earthworms go nuts for the cardboard. Right? Is that a good thing to say?
Yeah, we've been
And
going
2
over
layers.
this in class for sure. So a round of applause for
Thank you. Carry on.
That was awesome. What I love, man, is Jeff, you
Right on.
really just
Hey.
drove home a lot of the teachings over this last month and what the school's all about. He just drove it home in that slideshow presentation. So he came from like that professional world worth having the presentation, working with the USDA, and he pretty much told us word for word what we're coming from that natural farming side. Like we're all on the same page now. So this is all great information and great news that's the future of this world, and men like this and men and women like us out here are going to be the ones that come to these roles of leadership and implementation. So good future, and I think you really nailed it.
Thanks,
there,
so appreciate it, Logan.
respect.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's the day.